The 13th race of the ASA season proved to be unlucky for 3 of the 4 points leaders. Gremlins and hobgoblins swirled around Minnesota State Fair Park, leaving even the brightest candles sputtering in the balmy breeze. But for the man in black, the magic is back, stepping out from under the shaky points ladder to reclaim the top rung. As the short track wizards head into the spooky season homestretch, they're all driving headlong into a new curve on the treacherous ASA circuit. Short track racing series in America remains firmly camped in the heartland of the United States as the ASA Delco Challenge Series visits a new facility, Wisconsin International Raceway in Kaukauna, Wisconsin. Beautiful fall conditions are prevailing here, giving us a bit of relief from the hot, muggy weather that we have grown so used to on this season. And it is going to be a fantastic afternoon to watch a race here in Kaukauna. Hello again, everybody. I'm Brian Drebber. Don't be alarmed now. Rob Albright is here. He's just not right here with me. We'll be hearing from him just a little bit later on. For those of you who were with us for the last televised event and missed the Minnesota State Fair race, which was not televised, things are completely upside down. Some would say back where they should be, or at least where they used to be. Mike Eddy, once again, on top of the point standings after his excellent finish at Minnesota State Fair. Most of those that he was competing with in the points competition were much worse off. He'll be starting from the number 7 position here today. Brian Reffner, who had held the points lead, well, he took a quick trip in the plumbing at the Minnesota State Fair race, finished 27th, although his qualifying turned in an excellent run. He will start from outside the second row. And then Scott Hansen, who will start from the number 5 position, tied on points with Glenn Allen Jr. Hansen finishing 25th at the Minnesota State Fair, and he is expected to do extremely well. He's very familiar with this track. Glenn Allen Jr. starts from the number 12 position, finished 17th at the Minnesota race, and it is really a 4-man race for the points championship this year in the ASA Delco Challenge Series. This racetrack is going to be a very important factor in the competition here today because it is very, very different. But let's go down to the starting grid, to the men who know something about this place, and they're with Ralph Shaheen.
Brian, Bobby Donner starting on the pole isn't that unusual in ASA racing. It is his 3rd ever career ASA Delco Challenge Series pole. But how about this? He only did 10 laps in this car before putting it on the pole. Mark Schrader, his teammate this year, or today especially, helped set the car up for you. Now, getting on the pole is one thing, but not having a lot of laps, how much of a difference will that be during the race?
Well, if Mark's done the job that I think he's done, you know, I had an awful good car when I showed up. I don't know what the car's going to do in long runs, but the Lube Tech car is really looking forward to maybe getting in victory lane.
So Bobby Donner starts from the pole, but he's got a very unusual racetrack to deal with here at Wisconsin International Raceway. Here's Rob Albright with more on the racetrack.
Ralph, many ASA drivers will tell you that they race the track, not each other. Well, as we know, in most cases, that's just so much lip service. Not here, however, at Wisconsin International Raceway. As we saw yesterday, both in qualifying and in the last chance race, there are several lines that you can utilize to get around this racetrack. However, as these skid marks behind me attest, if you don't get through here just right, and we're at the entrance to turn number 1, you're in serious trouble. If you don't get through here accurately, you could end up against the outside retaining wall here in turn number 1, and that's something nobody wants to have happen this afternoon.
Well, we're getting ready to get this race underway, the moment that we and all the folks in the stands are waiting for, the start of the Tournament of Speed 300. And for that, let's go, and with a little something different this time, once again to Ralph Shaheen.
Brian, it's our first time here to Wisconsin International Raceway. It's fitting that a 5-time track champion gets us underway here at WIR. Okay, Hansen, give me a traditional Wisconsin motor startup.
Well, from Scott Hansen and all the great fans here at Wisconsin International Raceway, boys, fire them up.
There you go, Brian.
Cars on the starting grid for the beginning of this Tournament of Speed 300. We'll be back and set the field for you in just a moment. The 1995 ASA Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by your GM Goodwrench service dealer. We want your business. By Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it's wins, it works. By Goodyear, #1 in racing, #1 in tires. By the more than 1,000 AutoZone stores across America. AutoZone, the best parts in auto parts. And by Hardee's. Try Hardee's new $1.99 breakfast combos, fresh from the kitchen at Hardee's. Wisconsin International Raceway, a miniature version of Daytona, they say here, by the folks that have designed this place, and it is a very unusual racetrack. We'll get a little bit more into that. But beautiful conditions here, a packed house, enjoying the start of this race, the 14th on this long season. And after 13 of the 16 races that we will expect to see here this season, once again, Mike Eddy, who started out on top of the points battle, is right back.
Now look how close it is. At one point, Brian, last week at Minnesota, I was there doing the PA announcing. He was a lap down. Refner looked headed to a possible win as he led the race late. He had a problem, I think a broken sway bar for Refner. Hansen was out with an engine problem. Glenn Allen Jr. had a brake problem and a shifter problem. And it was Eddie who ended up in 5th place on the lead lap. Here's 6th through 10th. Brad Loney just can't seem to break into the top 5, but he still hangs tough in 6th spot. Bob Seneker, Mike Miller, Tony Raines, who really has run better than that, but he's had some mechanical problems. And Joe Knott, my choice for ASA's most improved driver, rounds out the top 10.
And looking at the rookie battle, something that we have not paid as much attention to this year as we did last, because Rick Beebe, once he got through the first race, which he didn't even make the starting field, has really been in control of the rookie battle so far. And there you can see that he has a significant points lead, but you talk to Rick Beebe and he says he is not about to think that this thing is in the bag. And his crew chief, Dennis Grossnickel, said, if we can get through this race, the next one and the one after that, then we'll talk about a rookie championship. And now let's take a look at the starting lineup. Front to back, we already met the pole sitter Bobby Dotter. Alongside him, Steve Holzhausen, who in the motorsports of Rice Lake Ford put on a great qualifying run.
Bob Seneker will start 3rd in his Johnsonville Lane Automotive machine. Brian Refner, who was the points leader, comes in starting 4th this afternoon.
And on the 3rd row, 5-time track champion Scott Hansen alongside Matt Kenseth. This young driver, he sat on the pole for quite a while, went early, but eventually ended up on the 3rd row.
13 of the top 16 qualifiers have tons of laps here at Wisconsin International. Mike Eddy doesn't, but he ran very strong in a 100-lap preliminary race last night. And Tony Raines, who was the cream of the crop at Topeka, will start outside row number 4.
Another one of the local drivers, Rod Wheeler in the old-style Bears Red Baron Pizza Pontiac. Kevin Sawinski, another guy that knows his way around this place. He'll be driving the Coleman Racing product, Postorino Chevrolet.
The 6th row, Jim Weber, who won the ARC Go 100-lap feature last night, and Glenn Allen Jr. will start on the outside of row number 6 in his Eaglewood CarQuest Pontiac.
And Joe Knott in the Allen Knott Valvoline Raby Thunderbird alongside Richie Bickle in the R&W Motorsports Thunderbird. A pair of birds back there.
Mark Schroeder, another local driver, and Jay Sauter will go from the 8th row, 15th and 16th respectively.
The winner of the Minnesota State Fair race, Bobby Gill, in the number 2 machine, his Pontiac alongside the Chevrolet Monte Carlo of Dave Sensible, last year's rookie champion.
And Dave finished 2nd at Minnesota last weekend. Gary St.Amant and Brandon Sperling, a very strong qualifying performance for this rookie driver who's coming on strong late in the season.
And the two that tangled a little bit a few weeks ago, Brad Loney and Mike Miller, find themselves right alongside one another. Brad Loney in the Winnebago Flex Steel Chevrolet, Mike Miller in the Atlantic Communications Pontiac.
12th row, Kent Stauffer, the ASA Top 10 veteran, and Rick Beebe, that leading rookie that we were just talking about a moment ago.
And 2 more of the Wisconsin drivers that are going to make it interesting here. J.J. Smith, number 55, in his Leo Motorsports Chevrolet, and Lowell Bennett, who will be driving Cindy Peterson's car number 36.
Row number 14, Todd Forbes and Ted Smokestad, who, along with Eddie Sharp, has made the 2nd place battle for Rookie of the Year, a tight one with Rick Miller.
Tony Roper in the number 10 entry to Child's Tire Snyder Willwood Chevrolet, alongside rookie contender Pat Bordeaux in his BASF FinishMaster Chevy.
Inside of row number 16, Tom Jones drives the Felpro Pace Jacks West Allis Palace Days in Pontiac. Boy, that's a mouthful. And Jay's younger brother, Tim Sauter, in the Pit Stop Sports Refresher Chevy, starts in the outside of row 16.
Starting 33rd and 34th, Rick Miller. He's got his work cut out for him to try to find Rick Beebe in the field if he's going to stay in the hunt for the rookie points. And Harold Fair back there in the Build-A-Mold Dana Pontiac.
We're now working our way into drivers who had to earn their way in through a last chance race yesterday. Bill Baird and rookie driver Eddie Sharp will sit side by side in row 18.
And And then rounding out the field, Dr. Yale Conley in the Simonton Windows Valvoline Chevrolet alongside Randy Larson in the Tony's Pizza Cops Food Chevy.
Well, we call this the Tournament of Speed 300, and that's because, Brian, it's been a whole weekend of racing here at Wisconsin International Raceway. We've alluded to the Art Go 100 last night. There was all kinds of local track racing on Friday evening. A total of 281 cars have participated. Unfortunately, several drivers who won't be going today because they missed the show, not fast enough, didn't make their way in through the last chance race. Randy Ruhlman in the Performance Line Products Ford Thunderbird, Tim Steele in the HS Dye Simlink Ford, Brad Funk, the Aries Lehigh Cole Pontiac, Billy Turner in the Central Fiber Sooner Speed Chevrolet.
Nevertheless, 38 cars will take the starting grid in an unusually long warm-up session here because it is a little chilly. The temperature overnight down into the 50s. 38 cars starting. It'll be a 300-lap race on this half-mile, very unusually shaped racetrack. You could say it either has 3 or 5 turns. The official word is we're calling it 5-turn racetrack. And turns 1 and 2, well, all the turns are much different from one another. There's even a little kink here in the home stretch. 1
lap away from the start. The track has been compared to Daytona. We understand it originally was drawn as a shrunk-down replica of Daytona. I was struck watching the Winston Cup race last night at Richmond how much this track really looks like a slightly smaller Richmond Speedway.
Well, the consensus is that it will be an interesting racetrack, that it is difficult to move from the front, from the back to the front on this racetrack. Not so much difficult to pass as it is difficult to make up ground here. We will see how some of the experienced drivers who are starting up front will do and how some of the really experienced drivers starting a little bit deeper in the field will be able to move forward in this race. Of course, another of the interesting side lights to this is how the points battle is shaped up here now that essentially 4 men have a shot at the points championship. As we get ready to go green, we'll be watching very carefully Mike Eddy, Brian Repter, Glenn Allen Jr., and Scott Hansen and how they fare throughout this entire event. Mathematically, there are probably 8 drivers capable of winning the championship here this year, going all the way down to Mike Miller in 8th spot. But realistically speaking, we're going to be looking at the ones we just mentioned. On the start here, jumping out to the early lead from the outside of the front row, the number 78 of Steve Holtzhausen taking the advantage away from pole sitter Bobby Dotter, and Holtzhausen going much higher into turn 2 there. Dotter losing a couple of car lengths, and Repter starting to pressure him already.
You know, I've been around racing enough, Brian, that normally I can go to a racetrack, watch practice and qualifying, and just visually try to pretty well determine who's going to be the fast cars. I was totally out to lunch yesterday. I sat and watched time trials, and cars that looked fast had slow laps. Cars that looked like they were all kinds of out of shape and sideways ended up being the fastest. Now, Tony Raines told me that qualifying here and racing, he feels, will be 2 different issues. His crew chief, Howie Ledow, has set car number 87 up for the long runs. Howie, of course, from here in Wisconsin, though Tony is unfamiliar with the racetrack, Howie says that on the long haul, Raines may be the guy to beat today.
Well, and it was almost universally true in qualifying that everyone's second lap was faster than their first. So a lot of people feel as though getting used to the track and getting the tires warmed up, getting everything working just right is going to make long runs much more interesting than the short 2-lap qualifying runs yesterday. Steve Holtzhausen doing his very best to run away early here. Bobby Dotter starting to gather it up just a little bit more. They've already gone single file. We're seeing very little movement through the field right now.
That car number 97 that you're watching along with the 28. 97 was Rich Bickle. He was fastest in practice but didn't qualify especially well. Directly behind him, the blue and black car, that's Jim Weber. Jim won the Argo race last night, but he inherited the lead about 7 laps from the end when Scott Hansen, who built almost a half-lap advantage, had an engine go away. Right behind them is Joe Knott. But it looks like Bickle, at least at this point, who's running in 13th position, not able to keep pace with the top 12.
We'll also be keeping a close eye on Mike Eddy for another reason. That is that he came here and was pretty much chasing his car, as they put it. He could not get his race car around this track at any kind of speed whatsoever. He did manage to qualify 7th, but more importantly, he also raced in that Argo race last night, qualified way back in the field, and was pretty much the only guy moving towards the front. He eventually made it all the way up to 5th from a starting position 11 or 12 rows back.
Well, already the leaders, Steve Holtzhausen setting the pace. You can see them exiting turn number 2, headed down the backstretch. Brian Repner beginning to put some pressure on Bobby Dotter for 2nd spot. Repner looking low. Dotter takes the high line. And, you know, I hope we don't see a repeat of what we did last week, and that is to get 87 laps into this race before the first caution flag came out. We saw a lot of drivers, Brad Loney, Tom Jones, a number of drivers that didn't have the right setup at the drop of the green flag, went down a lap early and were never able to get back on pace.
Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen with a word on Brian Refner.
Well, not only Brian Refner, but Scott Hansen figures in this as well, Brian, and that is the fact that those two drivers want to try to get up front and take as many points out of this racetrack as they can. The last two races on the schedule, they know that Mike Eddy and Glenn Allen Jr. have had lots of laps at Toledo and Jennerstown. But they know that here at Kaukauna, they have the knowledge that maybe they can pick up more points and leave here regaining the points lead.
There's Brian Refner running in third spot right now and regaining the points lead, of course, uppermost in his mind. Perhaps I spoke with Mike Eddy. Said, Mike, how do you feel now you're back on top of the heap? Typical Mike Eddy said, oh, it doesn't mean nothing until the last race is over with.
Yeah, and he's been on both ends of the truism that statement represents. We've seen him lose the points championship in the last race, and we've also seen him take the title as a result of a strong final race performance.
Nice battle going on there for 9th spot, the 0-1 of Rod Wheeler there. That silver automobile racing hard with the number 65 car. So those two guys who know this racetrack very well putting on a little bit of a show here in the early going.
And Rod Wheeler certainly knows how to get around this racetrack. Second in the 1995 Wisconsin International Raceway point standings right here. So this is his second ASA start. If Milwaukee started 20th and finished 34th. A much better run early in the going here today.
65 of Kevin Sawinski, the other car involved in that little set two back there for 9th and 10th place. Sawinski out of Menominee, Michigan, but he knows this track well.
I'm not sure that's Menominee, Michigan. I know there's a Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, and that would be my guess, but I'm just guessing. Kevin, in 1995, 2 ASA starts, started 3 times in 1994. Best finish was last season, finished 8th at Hawkeye Downs.
Showing a little bit of inside there, but Rod Wheeler able to hold him back. We're looking once again at a race for 9th and 10th up front. Steve Holtzhausen will begin to get into traffic. He already has started to get in a little bit. We're seeing also we're seeing a car going down onto pit road right now, that being the number 77 machine going onto pit road. And but up front, it's still all Holtzhausen.
The car that came on pit road, by the way, that's Mark Schroeder's Lube Tech Chevrolet, running this weekend as a teammate to Bobby Dotter, and unfortunately for him, looks like he may be out early.
Scott Hansen and Mike Eddy with a little bit of nose-to-tail action going on in their particular part of the world on this racetrack here at Wisconsin International Raceway. And the pass for 9th place, Kevin Sawinski getting around Rod Wheeler. And now Glenn Allen Jr. starting to put a little bit of pressure on the 0-1 car of Wheeler as well. So a change for position in 9th. While up front, the leader remains Steve Holtzhausen in the number 78 Motorsports of Rice Lake Ford. We'll be back to Wisconsin in a moment. Welcome back to Wisconsin International Raceway, the Tournament of Speed 300. Steve Holtzhausen, who started outside row number 1, shot to the lead, has opened up a huge advantage over second place Brian Refner. Although he's in a little bit of traffic right now, there you can see him saying hello to Bill Baird and trying to use the low line to get around. Bill Baird, the number 26 machine there, his Saturn Allen's Body Valvoline Chevrolet. And Steve Holtzhausen having more than a little trouble getting around Baird. Also, Brian Refner now working his way through traffic back in second spot and having an equally difficult time. There's Holtzhausen saying, come on, Bill, get out of the way, man. I'm coming through.
Steve obviously has a very, very strong car. Picks the tail end of car number 26 up, and you got to give Baird credit just for hanging on to that automobile. As you know, I think at this point he knows he's going to go a lap down. Discretion might be the suggestion I would make to him at this point. We'll see.
Well, whoa, he gets seriously sideways there. Now, you'd think as wide as this racetrack is, there are 3 very well-defined lanes, at least painted on the surface of the racetrack, that there'd be plenty of room for a guy like Holtzhausen, as fast as he is going, to just pull out in the passing lane and drive around the outside. He obviously wants the same line that Bill Baird is using, and he's just banging on him relentlessly out there.
You know, I talk about discretion, but let's give Bill Baird credit now. He is still on the lead lap. He has every right to use as much of the racetrack as he needs to try to stay ahead of Steve Holtzhausen. I think Steve would disagree, though.
Well, Holtzhausen has got him pinned down there, had a pick set for him by some more traffic. And Brian Refner, while all that was going on, has used the advantage, has used it to his advantage, and he has moved up well within striking distance now of the leader, Holtzhausen.
As have Matt Kenseth and Tony Raines. There's the black and white numeral number 5 of Brian Refner. He's moved into second position, and he now will have to contend with Bill Baird. Though I think now being a lap down, Bill may not not pose as much problem to the other drivers as he did trying to stay on the lead lap as he diced with Holzhausen.
Well, Refner got through pretty cleanly underneath there as we look at the number 78 of Steve Holzhausen, who shot to the lead from the very first lap, right around the outside of pole sitter Bobby Dotter. Dotter, interestingly enough, is headed for the rear as quickly, it seems, as Holzhausen headed towards the front. Let's go down once again to Ralph Shaheen. He is with the crew chief for the race leader right now.
That's Brian Nutterman. Well, Brian, what's he saying to you on the radio? He's having a little trouble getting through traffic.
He hasn't said a word yet, but the car owner's talking pretty loud right now.
I saw you talking to the ASA officials as well. Are they going to help you with the move-over flag?
They're supposed to be working on it. They're supposed to be down talking to the right people.
I also want to point out that Mark Schrader, the 77 Lube Tech entry, came in, changed the power steering belt. He's now back out, Brian.
Well, there again, I'm not sure that Bill Barrett really owed Steve Holzhausen anything. He was still on the lead lap, and we've got a spin. It looks like Rod Wheeler in the 0-1 car coming off turn number 4, and that is going to bring out the yellow caution flag. And several drivers who are in grave jeopardy of going a lap down will certainly welcome this opportunity to come on pit road.
Rod Wheeler, 0-1, that we saw locked in battle for this 9th and 10th position. He was passed eventually by Kevin Sawinski. No one has passed Steve Holzhausen, and he is our race leader. We'll be back to the Tournament of Speed 300 in a moment. Welcome back, everybody. The AC Delco Challenge Series, the premier short track racing series on the scene today, has joined forces with Short Track Racing Magazine, the premier publication geared to short track racing fans. For subscription information, call 1-800-468-7876 and do it today.
Well, they're taking a look at the 0-1 car of Rod Wheeler, so the problem's obviously much greater than just a simple spin coming off turn number 4. You can see that track fire crew are on the scene of that 0-1 machine, looking underneath, trying to determine, I think, exactly where it came from. But he brought that Red Baron machine on pit road, and suddenly there were flames coming from out of the wheel wells on both sides. And again, I think they're still trying to figure out where it's originating.
Let's take a look and see what happened. If I had to guess, because of all the smoke coming out from underneath, it might be that he lost some fluid maybe out of the rear end of the transmission, greased his own rear tires up. Around he went, just missing the end of pit wall, if he did miss it indeed. And Rod Wheeler facing the wrong way on the racetrack there. And there you can see the fire crew is, well, there's a little reason to be concerned, and it's no wonder they're hanging around.
Tried to watch that time on that replay as he came off turn number 4. It did not appear that there was contact with another driver.
Bill Baird also down on pit road, and Ralph Shaheen is with him.
Well, Brian, he's pulling away from me, and I don't know if you can hear it or not over the noise down here, but the motor has a bit of a miss in the 26. So they came in and took a look at it. There's some fluid left laying down here as well. Nobody really seems to know what the problem is. The motor didn't sound any better when he left than it did when he pulled in.
Bill Baird reluctant to go a lap down earlier on Steve Holzhausen. And now the caution brought out by the spin. We see from our vantage point, we can see the 26 car of Bill Baird going back into the pit, so he might get a revisit with Ralph Shaheen down there. And in any case, though, the field is bunched up, getting ready to go green flag here with Steve Holzhausen leading Brian Refner and Matt Kinson.
Up until last weekend at Minnesota State Fair Park, Brian Refner had completed 99.999% of all possible laps of competition, going a lap down early at one race, very early in the season. It looked like that string was going to continue at Minnesota, but it's virtually impossible to go a whole season without having a problem. And here's the rundown at the end of 30 laps, and that was 7 laps ago. Steve Holzhausen has led them all. Brian Refner has moved from 4th to 2nd, and Kevin Sawinski, a great run to 3rd position. Tony Raines there being shown 5th. He has gotten by Bobby Dotter for 4th. Bob Seneca runs in the 6th position.
Continuing to look down the field, what this does really, whereas the leaders had been getting into traffic and had a little bit more of a difficult time racing against the opposition and the racetrack than they did against one another, now at least Brian Refner has a clear shot at Steve Holzhausen. Likewise, Matt Kenseth, a shot at Refner. So the leaders are now racing against one another as much as this unusually shaped racetrack.
And we saw Kevin Sawinski on the board twice. In fact, that is the number 68 car of Kenseth, who was actually in 3rd position, and Sawinski is back in 9th.
Steve Holzhausen continuing to navigate around this track quite well, Rob. He's also briefly there, Refner looked as though he might challenge, but Holtzhausen's running away again. And back here, two of the great veteran drivers of the American Speed Association, Scott Hansen and Mike Eddy. Now, Hansen knew this place long before he got here. Mike Eddy took an opportunity to race last night to find out what he didn't know already.
And Mike Eddy learned a lot last night. Started deep in the field. Somebody said he started 22nd or 23rd and came all the way to 4th at the checkered flag and worked the high groove. That's what he's doing here this afternoon. But already, Brian, these three guys, Bob Seneker, Scott Hansen, and Mike Eddy, we've just gone back to green for about 4 or 5 laps. They're already a full straightaway behind the top running quintet of Steve Holtzhausen, Brian Refner, Matt Kenseth, Tony Raines, and Bobby Dotter.
And those 5 running away from the rest of the field, led by Bob Seneker. Then it's Hansen and Eddy and the rest coming up behind. They've already begun to run through the tail end of traffic. For Scott Hansen, a guy that has so much success here at this racetrack, of course, a lot of people would look to him for words of advice. We asked him what the single most important factor was in racing well here.
Well, you know, just getting time on it. You know, you need to run on the bottom of this racetrack. Just the difference from the bottom groove to the top groove is probably 2/10. You know, if you can make your car work on the bottom, you're going to have a good car here.
Well, that's exactly what Tony Raines had told us, too, that he felt comfortable, even though he was starting back in 8th position, that he had the car to go under long green flag runs, and he's proving that.
It's still really interesting how much ground. There we look at Bill Baird, who has had a couple of visits onto pit road already, one of which, of course, was detailed somewhat by Ralph Shaheen earlier. He went back in almost immediately, and his car is going very slowly around the racetrack right now, staying way up high, allowing plenty of racing room for those who are going underneath. Just ducking by was Bob Seneker, and there was Mike Eddy. Now we're looking at the leader.
And this is the last lap. This isn't earlier in the race when we talked about it. Again, he picks the tail end up of car number 26, and you got to give Baird credit for just hanging on to the machine.
Steve Holtzhausen just going like a battering ram. And, of course, his crew chief said, well, he wasn't saying much. Well, we've come to know that about Steve Holtzhausen as well. He's a man of pretty few words, but plenty of action. When he gets revved up and ready to go, well, we saw in Anderson, 400 out of 400 laps last year he led to his victory that time around. We'll be back with Steve Holtzhausen leading a packed house here, including Donald Duck. Welcome back, everybody, to Wisconsin International Raceway in Kaukauna. No, this isn't Hawaii, it's Wisconsin. Kaukauna, Wisconsin, to be exact. Just outside Green Bay and north of Milwaukee, with our leader, Steve Holtzhausen, encountering some serious traffic right now. He is really getting into the soup. We're going to go real quick right now to Ralph Shaheen down in the infield, who's a little bit in the yogurt of his own down there.
Well, when you got smoke and stuff dripping off your brakes, I guess you could say, Rod Wheeler, you got a serious braking problem. What happened?
Oh, yeah, we did. We broke a right front caliper. Short day. Red Baron car was running real well, but what do? You know, come back, go to Toledo. We'll go back there and see what we can do there.
Just over Rod's shoulders, the 55 car back behind us. That's J.J. Smith. He's getting his ignition worked on. And Bill Baird, second time he came in, they fixed the coil. They think that was the problem with the engine misfiring, Brian.
Now, Brian, Steve Holtzhausen is just setting a blistering pace. He's already put a lap on Tim Sauter, Harold Fair, and he's closing in on a whole host of cars that we normally don't see going a lap down, including Tom Jones, Dave Sensiba, Tony Roper, and Brad Loney. Here's Scott Hansen, and he's really been backpedaling in car number 53, started in 5th, and I think this is 9th, 10th, and 11th right now. That's Kevin Sawinski directly in front of him, and Rich Bickle behind in that white car number 97.
While Steve Holtzhausen, and speaking of blistering, a lot of guys early in the day here were talking about the fact that tires could be a real situation to deal with here. Goodyear came to the racetrack with what they call their number 3s, a very soft compound. This track surface is very abrasive. The good news is that it's cool. If it had been a very hot day, these tires could grease up mighty quick, but people are saying that tires are going to be tire wear, and how those tires behave late in the race is going to be a problem that all the drivers and their pit crews are going to have to contend with. And it could be, as hard as Holtzhausen is running, he may be using up his tires a little more quickly than the others.
It's good to see Richie Bickle back in an ASA car. Of course, he's been running some down south in the Winston Cup Series. And here's the leader once again, Steve Holtzhausen. And he had begun to pull away from Brian Refner and Matt Kenseth. But getting into lap traffic, all of a sudden it's Kenseth and Refner coming back really strongly. Now it is Holtzhausen going underneath Dave Sensiba, who finished second in the race last week at Minnesota. and the lack of experience on this racetrack really showing for young Dave. And the experience here on the part of these three out in front, that of course Holzhausen, Refner, and Kenseth really showing as well.
34 cars are still running, so we've lost 4 to attrition right now. 25 of them are on the lead lap, but that number's counting down pretty quick. Number 78 is the leader, Steve Holzhausen, with all these white cars out there on the racetracks, and even 2 of them with purple numbers as he tries to work his way past Lowell Bennett, the number 36 car there. It's 78, Steve Holzhausen, that is the leader, working on Tom Jones in the number 0 Pace Jacks Pontiac, and he is really starting to unwind the number of cars on the lead lap very quickly.
Tom wanted us to be sure and say thanks to the folks at the West Allis Palace Days Inn who were helpful on that car at Milwaukee, and then to get on the car this weekend. Trying hard as he can to stay on the lead lap, but I think it's only a matter of time if we stay under green that Tom Jones is going to go a lap down as they enter turn number 3. Holzhausen does put Tom Jones 1 lap off the leader's pace.
A long run under green, too, we might add at this point, and that is another characteristic of this racetrack that a lot of people mention, that it tends to favor long runs under green, so that brings another issue into play for the strategy of the pit crews and so on. They're not able to count on the high likelihood of a yellow flag coming out. We've had but 1 here so far, and other than that, it's been green flag racing for the duration of this 300-lap race. We're scheduled for 300, and we've run 65 laps at this point.
Second, third, and fourth, Brian Refner, the early season points leader in car number 5. You can see now his deficit to Holzhausen, about 4 or 5 car lengths. And this is the battle for 6th. Bob Seneker and Mike Eddy seem to be getting stronger as we go under green, as they have closed the gap somewhat between themselves and the 5th place car of Bobby Dotter, car number 08, that they now have to contend with the same traffic that the quintet in front of them just finally dispatched with.
They're working their way through that whole gaggle of cars to go a lap down here. Steve Holzhausen, Brian Refner, and the rest doing a wholesale job on putting cars a lap down. There certainly are far fewer than the 25 we mentioned a moment ago running on the lead lap now. Seneker and Mike Eddy, car just directly in front of them, the number 50 rookie driver Eddie Sharp, and then the whole train in front. It's quite a ways up to 5th place, or up to 4th place rather. The front 4 cars running quite a bit in front of these 2 guys.
A very interesting sponsorship arrangement has happened over the last couple of weeks. Johnsonville, who is the primary sponsor of Bob Seneker's car number 84, now is also on Ted Smokestad's car number 32, and Super America, who is rookie Smokestad's primary sponsor, is also on Bob Seneker's car. So we've got the white knight and the blue knight, and they said they're looking for a black knight. And in case you're wondering what we're talking about, another Wisconsin veteran, Dick Trickle, used to be called in different seasons depending on what color car he was in, the white knight, blue knight, or the black knight. Could it be Refner? Could it be Mike Eddy? Who knows?
Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen, is down in the pit of the number 53, Scott Hansen.
Well, I know we couldn't keep him away for too long. Good to see you back, Danny Stillman. Tell me a little bit about Scott Hansen. He seems to be slipping back a little.
Yeah, the car's just a little bit loose right now. We're going to stop and fix it. We'll be all right.
Now, we're running a lot of laps under green. Is that a pace that suits you guys, or is that a problem for you today?
No, the car's going to get better the longer it races under green.
Scott Hansen in his number 53, the AFCO Milwaukee Metro Auction Ford Thunderbird.
Rich Bickle now has passed Kevin Sawinski, and I think that is for 9th position. Bickle started back in 14th. He and Mike Miller, 2 drivers who have really picked up a number of positions in the early going of this race. And look at him stretch it out over Sawinski.
Richie Bickle in the 97, and we're going to go back and look at Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker. There it is. And I think that sponsorship you were talking about was what they call a shelf trade. I think what happened was that Super America stores are now carrying Johnsonville products, and Johnsonville is fueling its fleet with Super America products, and so they just got down there and played a little let's make a deal, and that effect is, of course, for both of them, it comes out a little bit better.
And we've seen that in racing quite a bit. Of course, Randy Larson, who has not had much success on the racetrack, but he's the penultimate sponsor getter, I think, in ASA Racing. He's got Tony's Pizza, and anytime we go to a different racetrack, it seems like it's Tony's in a different grocery store chain on that racetrack.
Things are settling out just a little bit here. Of course, as soon as we say that, something will happen to change the scenario and change it quickly. But right now, we're seeing Bob Seneker and Mike Eddy racing for 5th place, I believe. And we go back up front to the white number 78 with the purple number on it. He is the leader, still working on traffic, now trying to put Gary St.Amant a lap in arrears. A lot of folks enjoying some very good racing here on a beautiful fall day. There's a look at the top 10, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Brian Drever, Rob Albright, and Ralph Shaheen joining you for the Tournament of Speed 300 here at Wisconsin International Raceway. Steve Holtzhausen took the lead on the very first lap from outside of row number 1 and has been trying to run off and hide. He's not quite been able to do that hide part because Brian Refner's not too far behind him. But Ralph Shaheen has been following the story here, perhaps has a little bit of inside information on why Steve is doing so well.
Their crew says that they're running basically the same setup they run at Anderson, Brian, and you know what Steve Holtzhausen did at Anderson? 400 laps, green to checkered, he won the whole thing. And they say the key is right here in this adjustable Penske shock. These are the types of shocks that Holtzhausen's running. They believe the valving in this particular brand is what makes them so strong here today.
Steve Holtzhausen is setting the pace in car number 78, but leading wire to wire at Anderson and leading 300 laps here may be a completely different matter. You know what we have seen is cars that drop back early now seem to be coming back toward the front. Steve is the only one that's been extremely consistent, and the 4 guys that are nipping at his heels are no longer quite there. It is Refner, then Kenseth, Tony Raines, and Bobby Dotter. They've got about a half straightaway then over the 6th place car, who is trying to look back through the pack. I think it's now Rich Bickle. So these 5 are kind of stretching it out. You can see Gary St.Amant. He's gone a lap down. The car directly in front of him. Brad Loney, who is also unfamiliar with this racetrack, a lap in arrears. So is Tony Roper, and he's directly in front of Loney. So 3 guys that normally run pretty strongly not yet have figured out this racetrack. I'm sure if they come back next year, they'll do a lot better. We'll go back to the next group of automobiles, and directly behind them, there's Lowell Bennett and the 0 of Tom Jones. They are also 1 lap down, but those cars running right together on the racetrack.
It's interesting, and maybe you can enlighten me a little bit here, how without coming into the pits and making any changes whatsoever, cars do seem to be changing in the way that they get around the track. Is it driver input? Is it the fact that the fuel is going down? Maybe the car's loosening or tightening up a little bit based on weight change? Or, I mean, what is going on? Because, as you say, some cars are going forward, some backwards, when no apparent changes have been made. Smoke on the 88 out of the right front there.
Definitely
probably
a problem
under
on the Mike Eddy car, and he's dropped back a couple of, well, not maybe for position, but you can see Scott Hansen and Glenn Allen Jr. close right in on the back end of car number 88 as they've chased him down from about a straightaway back. In answer to your question, I don't know, but I'll tell you what I think. I think that a driver who can adapt his driving style to what the race car will give him, I think that's the answer to your question. We've talked about the fact there are 3 grooves around this racetrack, and as the tires go away, you might change your line and actually pick up 2 or 3 tenths. And I think the guys who have the laps here are proving that. Hansen, we mentioned he's dropping back. Now he's beginning to slowly make his way up toward the front again. He was a full straightaway behind Mike Eddy just a few laps ago. And I don't know what the problem is. Ralph, I'm sure, is down on pit road. And Ralph, what's going on with Mike Eddy's car?
Well, I got his crew chief, Howard Thomas. Howie, what's up with the car?
Well, I don't really know. I see a little smoke coming out of the right front. I'm going to assume it's probably from the brakes. He's probably got the brakes really heated up.
One thing about Mike Eddy is he's pretty quiet. They won't really know until they come in and pit. Also want to report that Randy Larson, the 02 Tony's Pizza car, is out. He's got a wheel bearing seizing up on it.
Turn number 1 here at Wisconsin International Raceway is what they call a brake killer because it's so flat. The banking doesn't really allow them any opportunity to slow the car down with the banking. And in fact, it's pretty much solid braking because the entire straightaway, including the little kink here that we call turn 5, is very, very fast. And then they have to really stand on it in turn number 1. It could very well be that Mike Eddy has heated the brakes up and could be having a problem that's going to cause him big difficulty later on.
There's a battle for 7th position. Glenn Allen Jr., who started back in 12th spot, I believe, has moved up to 7th. Scott Hansen, who started 5th but had dropped back to 12th, is now back up to 8th. He's been kind of the perplexing driver of the day so far. Scott Hansen hanging right with Glenn Allen Jr. As again, I think they've changed their line a little bit. These two guys both have been able to, over the last 15 or 20 laps, get their cars to hook up on the bottom, and that's the reason that they have charged toward the front. Look at Hansen putting the move on as they go into turn number 1, and may take 7th away from Glenn.
That turn 1 has also got a funny dip in it. You can see the car, number 53 of Hansen, as he runs down low there, just take a dive to the right as it dips into turn number 1. And Hansen maybe just throwing a little bit of a psych job on everybody. Of course, he knows this place so well, and he might have just eased off a little bit, let everybody think that maybe he wasn't running so well, and now he's back in it again and going alongside Glenn Allen Jr. Hansen taking that inside line that is apparently the key to success here, if we can believe what the guys that know what they're talking about have told us today.
And Jim Weber also getting back into the fray in car number 28. He had fallen back to 12th. Now he comes right in behind Hansen. You know, we talk about the advantage that the drivers who have a lot of laps here might have over the unfamiliar drivers. However, they aren't accustomed to running 100, 200, 300 laps at a stretch. So even they, I think, may just kind of have to see what the track will give as we progress. By the way, we've nearly reached the first third of this race. Lap 96 now completed. We haven't seen Steve Holtzhausen for a long time. The reason he's unchallenged.
It's a good point that you made about the fact that there are a lot of the drivers that do run here regularly don't have to make pit stops. The radio commercials on the radio promoting the event here, it's funny, they're talking about, be there, it's fast action on it, and there's pit stops.
Really? Pit stops, huh?
That was the big selling point, to get folks to come out and watch the race. And I'd have to say that they're very interesting. Here, number 31, Rick Miller, having a little bit of difficulty getting back out onto the racetrack. He either went around, I'm not sure why he's sitting there.
And a real blessing for several drivers, including Todd Forbes, rookie driver Brandon Sperling, Jay Sauter, and Mike Miller, who were in sight of the leader and about to go a lap down. I'm sure most of the drivers will elect now to come on pit road. The first what we expect to be 3 pit stops.
Let's take a look at it again from our speedy cam on the outside wall, turn number 1. Rick Miller, just kind of lost it coming out of 4 there, and around he goes. And where he stops, right at the entrance to pit road.
A lot of the locals said that was going to be the trouble spot. We've talked about turns 1 and 3. The locals said somebody's going to bang the wall coming off 4, and it was almost Rick Miller that proved them right.
Wholesale pit stops will be the order of the day, and we see Brian Refner, Tony Raines leading. There's the man who's leading the race, number 78, Holtzhausen, going in as well.
No, he's not.
Oh,
he's
staying
on
out.
The racetrack.
I'll be darned, you're right. He is staying out.
That's a surprise, and I think it could be a mistake. Now, he must feel like to take the risk of changing tires might mean a less than perfect setup. We'll have to see when we go back to green.
Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen.
Well, we're watching Mike Eddy's crew go to work on his car. Everybody else did come in and take on tires. Mike is changing left side tires. A lot of the teams changing right side tires. They're looking at the brakes on the left front section here. That's where the pumps for the brakes would be. They're looking up in there to see if they can get it fixed. It's actually Dave Sensiba's dad who is down in there putting more brake fluid in. So they're going to get it all set up and send Mike Eddy back out, hopefully with fresh brakes.
Mike Eddy up on the jack there in the pits. Just about everybody has come in, but once again, surprisingly, Steve Holtzhausen did not. He stayed out on the racetrack and remains our leader. Another flag-to-flag run for the number 78 car here. We'll have to wait until we come back to see as we continue. Welcome back, everybody, to the Group 5 Sports presentation of the Tournament of Speed 300 at Kaukauna, Wisconsin, the Wisconsin International Raceway. Some pretty creative folks here have been hard at work, of course, tearing up the linen closet and whatever else they could find to draw a little sign on there. There's Steve Holtzhausen, who, interestingly enough, elected to stay out while just about everybody else came in on pit road. Ralph Shaheen was hanging around down there, and maybe he's found out something we don't know. Ralph?
His crew chief is Brian Nuttleman. All right, Brian, the big question, why'd you stay out?
It's kind of well, actually, at Minnesota, we were probably pitted more than everybody else, like 9 times, and we kept losing track position. We thought we'd try it this way once.
All right, well, you've got about 110 laps almost in the books. How much longer can you stay out before you absolutely have to?
We're going to try to make it to 150 and try to make it on 1 stop.
That's going to be interesting to see, Brian, because we've seen a lot of green flag laps today. It'll be interesting to see if they can go that far.
Little riverboat gambling, Rob.
Yeah, I'm really surprised at that decision. Yes, they can make it on one stop, but we see about 4 lapped automobiles separating him from second place Tony Raines in car number 87. Now, if at the next caution Steve does come in, he can only change either right sides or left sides, where Raines and all the other drivers that were on the lead lap will have an opportunity to have 4 tires that are fresh. And we've got Dennis Lampman in the booth with us. Dennis, of course, an ASA racing veteran who's sitting out the last part of the 1995 season, getting geared up for 1996. Dennis, you're one of these Wisconsin guys. What's the thinking there? Is Steve making a mistake, or you think it's the right call?
Well, I think they're making a mistake. They could be getting tires on and run. If they get a quick yellow here, I think they might just drive right by him. There's a lot of racing left.
But what we really haven't kept an eye on is how much the times have fallen off. 17 cars are on the lead lap. The last car on the lead lap is Mike Eddy's car number 88, and Ralph is on pit road. Ralph, it's a very serious problem, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Rob. He has no brakes right now, so the crew is waiting. They're trying to set up a bit of a catching fence down here, if you will, with their crew. They're going to try and get Mike into the back paddock area back here where there's some grass runoff area and so forth. Howard Thomas and the crew letting everybody else around here know what the situation is. They're going to try and catch the car as he rolls in, get him to stop, and get it up on the jack stand and see if they can't fix the problem.
Well, the car has already stopped. We're seeing a shot of Mike Eddy's Goodwrench Pontiac, and he has stopped, I'm not sure exactly where, but nowhere near where the crew is waiting for him. That race car is clear on the other end of the track, and the only one anywhere near him is an ASA official.
You never write off Mike Eddy when it comes championship time, but if they're not able to get this car back out there, Dennis, when he's battling Glenn Allen, Scott Hansen, and Brian Refner, I think the likelihood that all 3 of them would have problems, you know, it's a very unlikely set of circumstances, so they've got to do everything they can as quickly as possible to get Mike Eddy out. But you can see him in the back paddock area with his helmet off. Is this the end of the line in terms of an 8th championship?
I don't know. There's still 2 races left, and he runs real good at Toledo and Pennsylvania, so I wouldn't write him off yet. I know he'll come from behind at Pennsylvania and put on a heck of a show there.
Mike Eddy stopping just inside turn number 3 in the back paddock area, taking his helmet off. And of course, I'm not ready to write him off yet. Of course, not for a win, but they very well may get that number 88 car back out on the racetrack. It's so important for him to make laps and make points. And right now, well, he was 17th, and the last car on the lead lap. They're already 4 or 5 cars out of the race. So Mike Eddy needs to get back out there just to circulate, because attrition could certainly still help him out.
Leader is Steve Holzhausen. Right behind him is Tony Roper, a lap down, along with Tom Jones and Dave Sensiva. Brian Refner is now passing Sensiva. There he is. He has gotten by Tony Raines, who came out of the pit stops in 2nd position. But it's now Refner 2nd, Raines 3rd, and look at Refner dropping to the low side.
Boy, Refner's got his car working extremely well down on the low side. Tony Roper, his minutes in 2nd position on the racetrack are numbered. It looks like Refner's just going to set up a high move, going high out of 3, low into 4. That's the accepted quick way around this racetrack. He's able to get out of that turn much quicker through the kink in 5, and already he's right back in the 2nd spot.
And it's pretty obvious, Dennis, that fresh tires do make a huge difference. Look at Refner now beginning to reel in Steve Holzhausen.
Yeah, the tires that they ran here this weekend were, they're going to have to change them a lot more often. They're a little bit softer than what we normally run for this type of racetrack. We run them here in 100-lap races and 200-lap races, but on a Sunday afternoon, getting into one and over that bump, if you're braking going into that bump, you end up in the middle of the racetrack, and that's the problem they've been having. So they've been trying to slow the car down before they get to the bump so they can roll over it.
It's 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th as you're watching. And we've had a problem down in turn number 1, parts all over the racetrack. It will bring out the yellow. Joe Knott, who was in 12th position, you just saw him, the rear of the car jacked up. Looks like either a rear end problem or maybe a transmission problem, likely something in the rear end of Joe Knott's car. And for the 10th place man in points, also looks pretty bad at this point.
Okay, real quick, we're going to head for a commercial break. We're going to come back, and it would appear now that this is the caution flag that Steve Holzhausen needed to get in and change tires. We'll have to see in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody, and hi there. A little flurry of activity while we were gone, of course, precipitated by a caution flag. Quickly, let's go down to Ralph Shaheen for an update.
Well, we've got Mike Eddy with us here. Mike, what was the situation with the brakes? Did they just go away all of a sudden?
Well, they were starting to get a little spongy. Then on the yellow, we stopped there and we changed the tires and checked the fluid, and it was down on fluid, so we were leaking fluid somewhere. Evidently, we got a brake caliper that's leaking or something, and which that wasn't bad. We got the fluid in and got brakes back, and then one of the shafts on the master cylinder bent, and the brake pedal stuck on the floor.
Well, they're fixing the car right now, gentlemen, to try to get Mike back in as quick as they can, pick up as many points as they can here. We also want to point out Steve Holzhausen, the leader, did come in and pit. They did not stretch it all the way to 150-plus laps, so they fueled that car up and got the number 78 back out onto the racetrack.
We noticed also that a couple of the other lead lap drivers, including Scott Hansen, Bob Seneker, and rookie Brandon Sperling, also came in for the second time. They've now got 4 freshmen.
Well, Steve Holzhausen lost a lot of track position that time. We'll try to sort all this out and come back with a clear picture of what's going on at the Tournament of Speed 300. Welcome back to Wisconsin, everybody, and a local legend, Tom Refner, whose son Brian, of course, is now our new leader after the pit stops. We're not going to tell you where our producer Joel McKee was hanging around when he found that poster. But nevertheless, Tom Refner's son Brian, our new leader after the pit stops, of course, points leader for a while until last weekend's race at Minnesota State Fair, and his terrible showing, 27th place finish. Well, now Mike Eddy's going to have one of those to show for himself here this week, apparently, and what a difference a week makes, Dennis.
That's for sure. It can turn around on you fast.
By the way, Lambert, maybe you can tell me. I know back in the old days of Super America's involvement in racing, Dick Trickle was the white knight, Tom Refner was the blue knight. Who was the black knight back then?
I don't know. He was from Minnesota. Hey, he was from Minnesota. I never got to race with him, I don't think.
Well, right now, the black knight, at least of this day, is Brian Refner, who may be sensing that he can reappropriate that points lead, is setting the pace in car number 5 as he continues to stretch it out, or he tries to stretch it out, I should say. Tony Raines is able to hang tough in car number 87. In 3rd position is Matt Kenseth, but now Raines and Refner are pulling away from Kenseth.
15 cars still on the lead lap. There's the number 51 car of Brandon Sperling, who has had quite a run here. Sperling starting 20th, and he's up to 15th and has been pretty consistent.
Yeah, we've really chronicled his progress this year as a rookie driver coming to ASA from way out in Alta Loma, California. At tracks where he had not been before, he was a complete non-factor. He's running extremely well today. Feels like he's kind of on even footing with a lot of the other drivers who've never been here. What really has helped him this weekend, Vic Getzlaff, who used to be crew chief for Dick Trickle, has been working on that car, along with Tim Kerzak, who was the crew chief for Brian Refner in 1994. So Brandon Sperling, I think, finally, near the end of the season, showing what this young man is made of, and he's going to be a contender in the future, I think.
Up front, Brian Refner in the number 5 could very well be the Black Knight here today. Of course, the man in black that we've grown so used to having all the action revolve around Mike Eddy, his crew working on that number 88 car, trying to get it back into the race.
Cars remaining on the lead lap. Of course, it's Refner, Raines, and Kenseth, 1, 2, 3. Up to 4th position is Rich Bickle in car number 97. Glenn Allen Jr. is 5th. 6th is Kevin Sawinski. 7th is Mike Miller, all the way from 22nd starting position. Running in 8th is Todd Forbes, also from deep in the field. 9th is Jim Weber. 10th is Jay Sauter. 11th is Bobby Dotter, who didn't have a particularly good stop. 12th is Scott Hansen. 13th is Steve Holzhausen. And rounding out the lead lap cars, Bob Seneker and the number 51 of Brandon Sperling.
An update on Mike Miller, and I'm inclined to give updates on Miller every now and then. He's not only moved around Kevin Sawinski, but 2 lap cars as well. Miller's heading for the front.
Well, you know, again, Mike is the kind of guy that knows how to make the car work on the bottom. I mean, he could do that consistently all day today. He will be a factor before the race is done, but he's still got a full straightaway to catch these guys who are right now battling for 3rd position. That is Matt Kenseth and Rich Bickle. Bickle had attempted to run for ASA Rookie of the Year. He did run for ASA Rookie of the Year a few years ago, battled all season long with Ted Musgrave before his car owner finally pulled his team late in the season. And car number 28 we just saw going very slowly by the start-finish line. That is Jim Weber, who's been in the top 10 all day.
Good race on the track here between Sawinski. There's Weber's car making a turn into the pit road. And now Sawinski and Bickle contending with number 26, Bill Baird, who apparently has just had a very ill race car all day long and is just nursing it around the track and getting some laps.
Well, that's Matt Kenseth, and I hate to correct you, but Sawinski, Kenseth, I know, both Wisconsin boys. Sawinski's still on the lead lap, but deep in the field in car number 65. Maybe it was the fact that early in the race we showed a graphic with Sawinski in 65.
Well, maybe it's the fact that one of them's driving a red car and the other one's a black car, and I just keep getting them confused.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I think it's brain damage is the only reason, an explanation for getting those 2 guys mixed up. But in any case, Matt Kenseth, who really has a lot of success here at this racetrack, 51 late model feature wins in his career, 34 late model feature event wins just in the last 2 seasons. And he is a real star of this racetrack. And visited with his dad just a little bit this morning. biggest race of his career, the national title, Miller Genuine Draft Nationals title. The youngest driver ever to win that title, Matt Kenseth, at number 68. Back up front, Brian Refner and Tony Raines applying a little bit of pressure here, trying to put the thumb screws on as Richie Bickle goes around Kenseth to take over that spot.
We had seen Tim Sauter in this car once earlier this season, as well as Tim Steele, who I think was in the machine last weekend at Minnesota, but Rich Bickle giving it its best ride of the year as Tony Raines puts the pressure on Brian Refner. Now, Raines, of course, won at Topeka on the road course over Terry Labonte. He was the dominant car, I felt, last weekend at Minnesota. I think he was the only guy that really could run with Bobby Gill, who eventually took the checker flag and made a $24,000 payday out of it. But Raines lost a cylinder early in the race. Well, Joe Knott and Mike Eddy have both had their share of problems, and I think Ralph has the story on Knott's number 48.
Rod, this is a Panhard bar here for one of the ASA cars, and this is the broken pieces of the one that was on Joey Knott's car. They've changed it. He's back out on the racetrack now.
Joe Knott, the number 48, very competitive when he's running well, but he's already down some laps. By the way, a footnote on Rich Bickle, the number 97 car, started 14th, is up to 3rd. And here's Mike Miller in the number 18 car, the Funcoland Atlanta Communications Pontiac. He's got a new sponsor on the hood of that car this week, and he's currently in 6th spot, but he has really started a march towards the front. Well, he is in the middle of a march toward the front, started from 22nd position, has been very steadily pedaling his way toward the leaders.
And just 2 cars behind him is Todd Forbes in the 07, neither of whom were expected to be much of a factor today. Both of whom have run very, very well. And I say Miller wasn't expected to. As you mentioned, he had a problem in qualifying. Almost everybody was 3 to 4 tenths of a second faster on their second lap than the first one. He had to live with his first lap as the engine was going sour the second time around.
Let's go to Ralph Shaheen with an update on Mr. Weber, the number 28 car driver.
Well, they blew the power steering pump on that car, Brian, and they're going to call it a day for Jim Weber.
Well, of course, Jim Weber with not nearly as much at stake as someone like Mike Eddy, for instance. Weber not running for any sort of points situation. One of the drivers sort of jumping in and out of the season for the ASA and perhaps holding his cards in abeyance for a run at a rookie title perhaps in sometime in the future. So Jim Weber, number 28, out of the race. They're calling it a day, as Ralph said. Meanwhile, up front, Brian Refner in that PMW number 5 car. Points leader as of 2 weeks ago. Last weekend lost that points lead to Mike Eddy. Looks like he might just get it back, especially if he keeps running like this.
Well, Dennis, I'd like to ask you, how much of the credit in Tony Raines' strong run should go to crew chief Howie Ledow?
I think quite a bit. Tony and him have worked real well together, and I think Tony brought a lot of information from Dillon race cars with him and could help out with some of the setups and stuff and some of the things that change, and I think that both of them have jived very well.
You brought up a good point. Tony Raines used to work for Ray Dillon, who fielded championship-winning cars for Mark Martin a decade or so ago in ASA. And I think that experience probably helped Tony as much as anything. He always was a talented driver, came to ASA in the Grand Mark Series back in the early days of that organization, and kind of learned the ropes that way and then working in the shops of Ray Dillon. And to me, that is one thing that differentiates most ASA drivers from their southern counterparts, is they learn to build and set up race cars as well as just sitting behind the wheel and driving. And that's why so many of the ASA drivers have had success here, and then maybe even greater success when they've gone down south to NASCAR.
Yeah, I think they got away from it a little bit, and now I think they're coming back around again where the car builders are getting the driver involved a little bit more, and it's needed because so they know which direction they're going when they do make a change.
And look at Rich Bickle in car number 97 as he has caught Brian Refner and Tony Raines, and now Raines, if he's going to make the move, has got to do it quickly.
These are your top 3 running cars, nose to tail right now, behind the number 5 of Brian Refner, and Refner working his way around some of the traffic on the racetrack there with Tony Raines right behind him. Talking also about Tony Raines, I have a little bit of input there. One of the days out at a racetrack a few weeks ago, the team had trouble. They had to replace an engine. Well, it was Tony Raines who was out there taking the engine out and making the final touches to putting the new engine back in. Howie Ledow, who had worked all night on the car, was not there, but Tony Raines was working on the car the next morning, putting the final touches on it before qualifying.
It just gives you an additional level of confidence, too, when you've had something to do with the actual dialing in of the race car. Well, if you're wondering about Steve Holtzhausen, these guys can see him on the back straightaway. When they exit turn number 2, he's just going into turn 3. And Dennis, again, you really have to wonder about the decision to keep Steve Holzhausen out when all the leaders came in under that caution flag at about lap number 100.
Yeah, a couple cars came in with him. Scott Hansen came in, I think Bob did too, and it might pay off later, but if these guys keep on running at the pace they're running at, they might not be able to stay afloat.
Just a lap away from the halfway mark in this Tournament of Speed 300. 150 laps going in the books here within a matter of seconds. Our three lead cars running right together. Richie Bickle trying to give Tony Raines a little bit of a look inside.
And as a result, it has allowed Brian Repner to breathe just a little easier as he stretched his lead over Raines to about 3 car lengths. You have to feel like, though, if Bickle is able to get around Raines, that he could put the heat on Repner as well.
Also out on the racetrack, of course, just a little bit further back is the battle for 4th, 5th, 6th place while we watch the three leaders. And cars are pretty much scattered all over the track right now. At the mid-race here, we've had 2 leaders in the whoa.
And Steve Holzhausen is up into the wall in turns 1 and 2. That car is coming to a stop in turn number 2. Steve Holzhausen, that Motorsports of Rice Lake Thunderbird that was so dominant, I don't know, maybe a little bit of cat and mouse being played between the starter and Steve Holzhausen. And Eddie Sharp has spun also, and I think that's way down in turn number 3. Car number 50 has made contact with somebody or something, the right front damage to that red Ford Thunderbird.
Not sure if those two events were related in any way. Holzhausen coming to a stop and getting back going again. Eddie Sharp now trying to make his way in the reverse direction. There's a tire down, of course, on Holzhausen's car. Once again, we don't know whether the tire went down first and then he hit the wall or whether this is a result. There was some debris over in that turn 1-2 area earlier, and let's take another look at it here. Perhaps we can get a little bit better look.
Well, he was running right down in the groove in turn number 1, and you can see that the right front has already gone down. He's just hanging on, riding it up into the gray stuff, loose debris all over the racetrack, and boom. And you have to feel like, Dennis, as hard as he hit, he's probably done some damage to the right front corner. Ralph Shaheen is there.
Well, they've already changed the right front tire and gotten him back underway, and it didn't look like they were too concerned about suspension damage. We'll get over here and check real quick with Brian while we wait for the rest of the cars to come down pit road. Brian, did you have any problems with suspension?
Yeah, the sway bar's broke.
Okay, so broken sway bar for Holzhausen, and now we see Brian Repner come in. His crew's going to go to work on his car. This is a scheduled stop for this team. They plan on coming in and making this one. They think they will probably make at least one more before the afternoon is done. We are past the 150 lap mark. Oh, and they have trouble getting the left rear on. Their car falls down off the jacks before they get the left rear on. So this is really going to slow them down as Rich Bickle and Tony Raines have both gone to Wyam now.
So have a number of other cars, including Jay Sauter, Kevin Sawinski, Matt Kenson, Mike Miller, Glenn Allen Jr. All were on pit road, and Repner's going to come out near the tail of the lead lap.
Well, things are not what they were a moment ago. Pit stops have a way of making that change, so perhaps the guys designing the promotion here, there are pit stops, has been a significant factor. Hello again, everybody, from Wisconsin International Raceway. You're watching live ASA Racing on CNN. Glad you could join us. Glenn Allen Jr. circling the track in 6th place right now. When we came here, our young colleague Josh Duvall was as curious as we were about how these drivers deal with a new track. That's the subject of this week's Young Racers.
Hi, I'm Josh Duvall. As kids, we have a lot of new things to face in life, and that doesn't stop when you become an adult. So all these drivers here, they're at a new track, and we're going to go to Glenn Allen Jr. to see how he faces a new.
Well, the biggest thing in the morning when we first get here, normally I walk the racetrack just to see where the bumps, the dips, and all the creases are, and being able to look at where the tire marks are from the races the week before, or where the cars are at in the groove, and so on, for I have some understanding before I go out on the racetrack of what's in front of me. Once we hit the racetrack, normally I try to take it easy, slowly get up to speed, try to find some cars that's got a lot of laps here, and fall behind them and make some laps and figure out what the car's doing. Once I come in, I get out of the car, relate the message of what we need to do to the chassis or what I think will be better for us to go faster. At that point in time, I get up on time, normally up on top of the hauler, and watch the guys that's got a lot of laps here, the Scott Hansons and the Tony Raines and the other guys that run here weekly, just to learn where they're braking, where they're on the gas, and certain things about the racetrack. And really, that's what I do during the whole day, that a place I've never been to, trying to get experience.
If you've got a question about racing, send it to me at The Young Racers, P.O. Box 26792, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28221.
Whoa! green flag racing. And just, I'm sorry, but just as we got ready to say we're racing again, well, round and round he went and into the end of the pit wall down there. We've got another caution flag coming out because the 08 of pole sitter, Bobby Dotter, becomes the latest victim here and the latest cause of a caution.
The real beneficiary of that was the number 33 of Brad Loney, who had gotten back on the tail end of the lead lap directly in front of new race leader Scott Hansen. And with Dotter spinning, it allows Loney to go all the way around the racetrack. So he got a poor start today, but he's battled back and will be the last car on the tail of the lead lap. There he is in that Winnebago Flex Steel Chevrolet. Brad has been the subject of some conjecture, as have Glenn Allen Jr. that we just saw. These are guys that are occasionally mentioned about other rides. And there is Brian Refner. He's on pit road, and Ralph was there. I'll get back to that story in a minute.
Well, they're going to change the other side now, gentlemen. They're going around to the right side tires, and they're going to make a little adjustment to the body fork on the left side from when the jack fell, when the car fell down off the jacks, and now the motor stalls, and then they get them back underway.
Brian Refner back on the track. Here's the previous pit stop, Ralph.
Watch this, Brian. You'll notice crew chief Les Bach slides the jack up underneath. As the car comes up, they lose one of the tires, and the tire actually hits the jack handle, and the car is going to drop straight to the ground. See it? Right there. So they had to take a second to get the car back up in the air, get the tires on, and get them back out. Just one of those freaky things that happens in racing.
Well, and subsequently, Brian Refner lost a lot of track position on that pit stop. Now he's come in, and he has 4 very fresh tires. So, Dennis Lamont, I'll ask you, and of course Rob as well. You say that fresh tires make a big difference here on this racetrack. Well, the guy with the freshest tires now is Brian Refner.
Yeah, I wanted to comment. We're looking at Glenn Allen again. He, Gary St.Amant, and Brad Loney have been the subject these most recent weeks of some speculation. Glenn Allen, according to Speed Sport News, is going to be in the 99 car in Busch Grand National next year. He says that is not a done deal, as was reported, though there are negotiations going on. Gary St.Amant has been offered the Roush truck ride, I understand. He'll stay, and at least that's what he's telling us. And Brad Loney says he's at least a year away also.
Well, that gives us a few things to think about while we listen to some more important messages here. We're once again under caution. We expect to be racing when we come back here at the Tournament of Speed 300. Welcome back, everybody. Our leader, Scott Hansen. See Scott run. See Scott try to run away from the field like he did last night until he broke. He led 95 out of 100 laps and almost won the race here, the Artgo 100 last night. And he has come back on the racetrack, has opened up a huge lead over the battle for second place, led by Bobby Gill, the winner a week ago.
And Bobby Gill continues to impress in that Jim Daly, Justice Brothers Gill and Car Care Products car number 2, but he now has his hands full with Tony Raines. Now, Bobby Gill has no experience on this racetrack, and he's been on the lead lap all day, but this is as strongly as we've seen him going since the drop of the green flag. I think Raines is going to get around him. When he does, he's got a long way to go to catch Scott Hansen as we've reached lap number 173. And finally, I think now Tony has the edge, and here comes Glenn Allen charging, and he'll try to take over third position, and I think he'll get that done as well.
Tony Raines moving into second spot. Bobby Gill pretty courteously moving out. Maybe that's just where his car has to be. Now, Glenn Allen Jr. working the inside line. That is the one that everybody says you have to work in order to be successful here. Tony Raines set sail after leader Scott Hansen. Glenn Allen Jr. trying to follow suit. Brad Loney, who we thought had managed to get off, get himself unlapped, has been put behind Hansen, the leader, and is in fact still a lap down. Let's go to Ralph Shaheen. He's got a little bit of an inside tip on the number 2 car.
Well, after their big win at the Minnesota State Fairgrounds, Bobby Gill and the Justice Brothers guys were getting on crew chief Jim Daly. Hey, buy us a big dish so we can get all our favorite racing on TV. Well, as creative a guy as he is, Daly got him one. A dish. He's got the right network and the right racing. Maybe if they win here today, they get the real thing.
I don't know. After the payday they had last weekend, some 24 grand, if they can't afford a dish then, I don't know how they're going to afford anything more than a paper plate today.
And, of course, that rendered Bobby Gill ineligible for any future Rookie of the Year considerations that he might have. But as Jim Daly put it, hey, we'll take that 25 guaranteed in the bank against a lottery ticket for $50,000 in a Rookie of the Year chase. You got to run 18 races to get Rookie of the Year. We ran 1 and got half that money all at once.
Brad Loney is a lap down as they cross the start-finish line in conjunction with Bobby Dotter's spin. I thought he was slightly ahead of Scott Hansen. Not so. He's now losing spots on the racetrack. He is a lap down. Mike Miller gets by, and now Matt Kenseth will work the high side in car number 68 along with Rich Bickle. Meanwhile, up in front, these cars are about half a lap now behind the leader, Scott Hansen.
Brad Loney finally getting down on the low side of the track and allowing the guys to get around the outside. He was very reluctant to give up that position. He felt like perhaps that he was back on the lead lap, and once the leader started to come at him there and the other guys tried to get around, Brad trying to race with him, but of course these guys are on the lead lap. Brad only a lap down now, and we're looking at the string of cars stretched out behind the leader, Scott Hansen, who is just gone.
There is Jay Sauter in car number 1. He's had a strong run. He's in 7th position. Scott Lefevre, who's fielding this car for him, has said if we have a few good impressive performances this year, maybe we can get a major sponsor and do the whole thing in 1996. We understand they're very close to inking a deal with Trop Arctic and Phillips 66. Today's run is not going to hurt him in that quest to sign that major sponsors. He's running in 7th position, directly in front of now Brian Refner and 07 Todd Forbes.
There's Jay Sauter's car number 1. Up front, Scott Hansen with a pretty sizable lead on Tony Raines, although Raines is beginning to make up some ground. We can see the front end of his number 87 car sneaking into the picture there as we watch the leader, Scott Hansen. We'll watch him while you watch some important messages from our sponsors. We'll be right here when you come back at the Tournament of Speed 300. We weren't gone that long. Hope you missed us. Here's Scott Hansen, who is still leading, and he can do, we got some debris on the racetrack there just as Hansen went by the start-finish line. We see some stuff scattering out. That perhaps will bring out a caution. Doesn't look like anything too serious. Yes, the yellow flag is waving. There's the stuff rolling around just outside of what they call turn number 5, the kink in the middle of the straightaway. Let's go to Ralph Shaheen with a man whose day started out so well and has pretty much come to an end.
Well, Steve, we documented you hitting the wall and coming in to get the tire changed. Was the damage just too much, and that's why you're done?
Yeah, it's too bad for the motorsports team here. We had a great car today, and it's just too bad. We got in the wall, and we messed up the front end. Just too bad we can't put it back together and run.
Were you sorry you pitted when you did? That was a bit of a gamble, or do you still think that would have been the right call had you not hit the wall?
Well, I think we'd have been in good shape. I only wanted to stop one more time, so, I mean, the car was pretty good. Just too bad it happened.
Tough day for a former Rookie of the Year here in the ASA Tour. We also want to update you on Mike Eddy. They're bleeding the Blakes right now, and as soon as they're completed with that, Mike Eddy will be back into this race.
There we see the number 88 Goodwrench Pontiac, a whole handful of laps down, heading back out onto the racetrack. A number of the leaders coming in, including Scott Hansen. We'll update you when we return to the Tournament of Speed 300. The 1995 AC Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by WIN Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it wins, it works. By your GM Goodwrench service dealer. We want your business. By Just for Men, the leader in men's hair coloring, blends away gray in 5 minutes. And by Pep Boys Automotive Supercenters.
You know, Brian, we'd be a bit remiss if we didn't say thanks to a couple of very important people. Bruce Sherman, the folks from ASCO, and their TV trailer for our TV compound. Thanks a lot. And also to Roger Van Dalwyk, who's the track owner-operator here at Wisconsin International. Built us a brand new television booth, probably the nicest one we've had all season. Thanks, Roger.
Okay, the trivia question for the lap 187 mark here is who's the new race leader? And we'll give you a clue. His number 84 blue race car is right in the middle of your screen. Bob Seneker.
Bob Seneker has just been quietly in the hunt all day, mostly been a 5th or 6th place car. You think Dennis Lampman, with 100 laps to go, is it his plan now to stay out the rest of the way, or is he going to need another stop?
He might stay out the rest of the way. He stopped earlier and put on right side tires, and now they changed lefts and then rights. He might be set for the rest of the race, depending on how the yellows fall here.
I don't know, the guy right behind him there, you can see the front end of Brian Refner's car number 5. Now some damage to the left front quarter panel of that automobile. Some of that Kevlar fiberglass bodywork is come loose, and I don't think that's going to create a problem unless it comes off the car, and then it could be a trouble for the guys behind him.
Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen with Bobby Dotter, who was running second when he called it a day.
Well, the Luptec car's done for the day, Bobby. What happened to it?
Well, this isn't where I was hoping to be talking to you from. We had a car that was capable of winning the race, I believe. We stayed right up front, weren't hurting the tires, car was running great, and it was just a little on the loose side, and the driver just messed up. I mean, we got a little loose coming off 4. Scott dove under a slower car, and I tried to follow him, and I turned down a little too hard coming off the corner, and the back end come around.
It's been a good weekend for you, though, all in all here, and you're an occasional visitor with us. Will we see you back before the year is out, or what are your plans for 96?
The plans for this year, this was our last race we were planning on running, so I don't really expect to run anymore now, but I'd like to do it again next year. You know, Lube Tech's been a great sponsor. We were able to at least get them a pole position, even though we couldn't get them a win, so maybe they'll want to be back.
Hope to see you back with us. Bobby Dotter, done for the day.
Okay, Lampman, you're a race driver. Tell me, what the heck is that hanging off of Brian Reffner's left front fender? I see the fender's intact, so what is it?
It looks like the piece that goes between the fender and the door, that the edge work for the fender
peeled right up
and
from the
then
bottom.
as the air came by, it's just done take it off.
Well, I'll tell you what I thought when I first saw it, by the way it was shaped. I thought Brian had his leg hanging out of the side of the car there trying to cool his foot off.
Maybe Mike Eddy wasn't the only one without brakes.
Speaking of brakes, we're going to take another one here while the cars are circling the track kind of slow. Not a whole lot going on right now. We'll update you on the new order when we come back. Welcome back. We're still under caution. Here's a little surfing Wisconsin style in Kaukauna, Wisconsin, as we call this place. We all thought we were going to Hawaii when they said we were going to Kaukauna because of the way it's spelled and looked. This is Mark Hampt, our fan cam operator, out there having a little fun prior to the start of the race today. He's running fan cam out there in the grandstand right now. Every once in a while, you'll see people waving at Mark saying, "Hi, Mom."
He is a crazy man, too. that just reinforced what most of us already knew about him.
Warm, dry nose on that puppy, that's for sure.
Well, there's your race leader. It's Bob Seneker setting the pace. Behind him in second spot is going to be Brian Reffner, who has a chance today to reappropriate the points lead from Mike Eddy, who is some 87 laps down. And
don't count him out, though, folks.
Well, I think you can for today. I think I agree with you guys that it's too soon to say he's out of the championship hunt, but he's not going to win the race today. Reffner is in second. Behind him in third place is Todd Forbes in 07. And what a great run he's having again today.
And a long overdue good run for Todd Forbes. He's been has had his share of misfortune this season and somewhat mediocre runs. Here's the rest of our schedule for the American Speed Association AC Delco Challenge. 1st of October, back to Toledo. That one will be fun. We always have a good time at Toledo, and it always shows us great racing. Then, of course, the season championship, the Ender, October 15th. We're in Jennerstown for the AC Rapid Fire 400. We hope you'll join us either live and in person or over the airwaves here with myself and Rob Albright and Ralph Shaheen and the whole crew that works hard bringing you these ASA telecasts. We have a good time. We hope you enjoy it, too.
We need to extend some get well wishes. This morning we had a scare on pit road. Chuck Beck, who is one of the crew members for Ted Smokestad's car number 32, had some sort of seizure, and he and his son Jeff, who also work on the race team, headed to the hospital with Ted Smokestad's wife Kathy. We haven't had an update, but he was talking to the paramedics on the scene, so our prayers are with you, Chuck. Get better. And Alan Lawrence, who's a part-time crew member for the number 6 car of rookie points leader Rick Beebe. He is also a race driver. And Lakeside, Kansas Speedway last weekend, he was involved in a crash and was hurt pretty severely. He's on the road to recovery, but we say get well to Alan. And also R.J. Scott. We got to pass this one along real quick. R.J. Scott, who is the PR and promotions marketing guy for ASA, he went straight from Minnesota last weekend to this racetrack. And what happened this week? Only his anniversary to his bride Ann and the fourth birthday of his little daughter Shelby. So RJ wanted him to say, "Hey girls, I love you and I will be home, and I hope you forgive me for missing the birthday and anniversary." On the right life of a racer, huh?
There's Bobby Gill back out on the racetrack after a black flag incident. Ralph Shaheen was down there presiding over the ceremonies. What was going on, Ralph?
Well, it was a bit frustrating for crew chief Jim Daly. What was the reason for the black flag, Jim?
The rear end has developed a leak, and I guess today isn't our day like it was last week, but that Gillen Enterprises Justice Brothers Pontiac, but we had the rear end apart, put all new seals in it this week. That's what you do after these 300 lappers, but something else is leaking somewhere, and I think it was the rear cover. I tightened it up. We'll just have to see what happens.
Bobby is a lap down, though, now in car number 2. So from near the front of the pack to the tail end, a lap down as the pace car is gone, and we're ready to go back to green, with some drivers electing to stay out, others coming on pit road. A real shuffle up front, and you can see the drivers in the top 6. And Now the rest of at least the top 10 or 15, 13 cars are showing on the lead lap.
Getting ready to go back green here for the final 100 laps. So this might be just a little bit like the race we had here last night, a 100-lap dash. There may not be any pit stops in the final 100 laps here, as Roger Slack waving the green flag, the new race leader, the Bluebird. Bob Seneker, of course, his success throughout this season and throughout his entire career has been virtually unequaled. 13 starts, 13 finishes, 2 wins this season. He is the winningest driver in the history of the American Speed Association.
There is Todd Forbes, the 07 machine, and, you know, there may be a problem for that car. Look at him wiggle going down the backstretch, although he went strongly into turn number 3. And Brian Repner now challenging Bob Seneker for the lead. So this young upstart driver in just his second season of ASA competition looks like he's still going to be the guy to beat for the championship this season. Side by side, tucks the left front tire down into the grass in turn number 2.
So some racing back up front. We're not sure if the jury's still out on what that is hanging off of Brian Repner's car, but the officials have decided it's not serious enough. Looks like it might just be a bunch of tape or something, maybe even some decals. In any case, Brian Repner challenging once again for the lead in this race. Repner with a lot of experience on this track. Bob Seneker with a lot of experience, period, are the 2 guys running up front right now.
I think Lampman was right about what that is. It looks like just a piece of the bodywork that's directly behind the left front wheel. That is just an unusual way for... How would you tear a piece of the body off that way, Dennis? I've never seen it.
Well, they had trouble with that jack before, so when they came down, it might have hooked something on that wheel. I couldn't see from here where they were on the left front or left rear what tire they had trouble with.
It certainly has not impaired his ability to go quickly, as he still runs in second position. And there is the battle for third now between car number 07, Todd Forbes, and Kevin Sawinski in car number 65. And again, the drivers who have lots of laps here at Kaukauna are making their way back toward the front again. Sawinski, who has raced here many, many times, now challenging Todd Forbes for that third position.
Well, even Sawinski may want to reach up and adjust his rear view mirror, because Tony Raines and Scott Hansen are coming like gangbusters up through the field right now, too, after they've put on fresh tires. So this last 100 laps is going to be very interesting indeed. Also, Glenn Allen Jr. making a hard run up towards the front of the field.
Rich Bickle right with him as well. And now Sawinski has wrestled third spot away from Forbes, but not one to give it up easily. Todd comes back, put a bumper on the rear end of car number 65 in turn number 3. Not enough to get Sawinski unsettled. And now Kevin will try to chase down Seneker and Repner.
Dennis Lampman, another quick question for you. As difficult as it is to advance on this racetrack, to make up ground, as everyone has said, now the question is, can Bob Seneker and Brian Repner run away from the front while the other guys have to contend with getting through traffic before they can join them?
Well, it's how hard they drive their cars. If they take it easy and take them 1 lap at a time and 1 car at a time, they won't wear their tires out getting there. But these guys are going to try to stretch it out.
Well, we have another opinion about what it is on Brian Repner's car that's hanging out. Ralph Shaheen apparently has done some homework.
Well, Brian, you guys are all right. Basically what it is there's a piece of the bodywork from behind the tire, and you might remember we were talking about it earlier from the pits. They came in and actually applied some extra tape to keep that down there, and that all developed after the pit stop where the jack fell while they were changing the tires, and the tape apparently is not holding as well as they'd hoped.
Well, apparently among the 3 of us, we have one brain up here in the booth.
Give Lampman the dollar. Now, as we said, has not slowed him down. The entire left 2/3 of the left side tires were off the edge of the pavement down in turns 1 and 2. Repner wants the lead. And, you know, at this point, Dennis, you know, you might think, well, why would he be running this hard? And he's finally got the chance to get the lead back from Mike Eddy, would be the guy to beat for the championship. Why would he run Bob Seneker this hard?
Well, he wants to win. You're all out there to win. And the more time you be on television, the better your sponsors become, and the people get recognized more. So run it as hard as you can.
Well, there is now 7th and 8th positions running through traffic. Rich Bickle and Glenn Allen Jr. Bickle just got by Glenn as they're trying to stay with Scott Hansen and Tony Raines. And a lot of problems it looks like maybe developing for Rich Bickle. Look at that puff of smoke out of the tail end of car number 97. At this point, though, he hasn't slowed on the racetrack.
Might have been a little braking smoke. He might have dialed in just a little bit too much front brake, not enough rear. That would be a guess. Doesn't cost anything to guess up here.
I'm not guessing. He was rubbing around on a couple of guys trying to get underneath him, and he got the right front fender laying against the tire.
We saw some debris on the racetrack as he went into turn number 1 a couple of laps ago. Let's see. You see that puff of smoke? and see something coming out from behind that race car. And I don't know, it looks like something out of the exhaust system, perhaps, doesn't it?
Looks like one of the mufflers are coming apart.
Muffler, he lost his muffler bearing.
Muffler bearing.
Muffler bearing,
I
yeah.
hate it when that happens. A little piece of whatever it was almost caught Glenn Allen right in the windshield, too. So, fortunately, it bounced out of harm's way, apparently. And either it has not been noticed or it's not significant enough for anyone to worry about a caution flag at this point on the racetrack. But you saw it along with us. There's Richie Bickle again. Let's see if he's having any more difficulty.
Car hasn't lost speed at all, and Kevin Sawinski now has ridden right in behind Brian Refner. Refner's not been able to apply any new pressure to Bob Seneker. He's going to have to, though, if he wants to keep Sawinski behind him. And what a great run for Kevin.
12 cars on the lead lap, 8 more that are down a lap. So we have a total of 20 cars within a lap of the leaders, 12 on the lead lap, 8 down 1. 31 cars still running out of 38 that started the race, for those of you keeping score.
Okay, you've been right all afternoon, Lamp, but I'm going to give you another shot. You know, this entry list says Kevin Sawinski's from Menominee, Michigan. Is that right?
That's just up here somewhere off of the lake.
Oh, there really is. I thought it was Wisconsin. I thought he was from Wisconsin.
Originally, he was from upper Wisconsin, and they moved over to Coleman Machine just outside of his shops, and that's where the cars are prepared.
Way up there where it gets really cold, huh?
Sometimes.
He's putting the heat on Brian Refner now, trying to take over that second position.
Battle for sixth here, and I mentioned before, Scott Hansen going like a freight train up through the field. He's working his way around the number 7 of Gary St.Amant, and there's Bickle's car, of course, but Hansen has gotten around him and is really the car on the move right now.
Well, actually, I think Bickle is now trying to pass Hansen, as Hansen has lost touch of Tony Raines. Raines has pulled away from Scott. They were battling for 4th position, and now Raines is closing in on the top 3, and it looks like Scott's the one with maybe a bit of a handling problem.
I'll buy that. It is Bickle moving forward, and Hansen having the worst of the time of the two of them. And the front 3 cars, however, still continue to run hard and try to run away from this race. It is Bob Seneker, Brian Refner, and now the number 65 car, of course, of Sawinski. That's the lead trio right now as we approach about 75 laps to go.
Well, I know all but these 3 drivers would like to see a caution. They're now about a half straightaway ahead of the 4th place car of Tony Raines, who's gradually worked his way up through traffic.
And we're going to get it.
We're going to get it right now. There's been a problem, and leader Bob Seneker spins.
Somebody put some fluid down.
Gee, great minds all run in the same circles and try to get their words out at the same time. Look at Seneker, as it is very slippery up on the bank in turn number 2. So the caution that he didn't want to see, well, he really didn't want to see it this way.
Ted Smokestad's number 32 has come to a stop. Bit of a mystery there. We're not sure why.
He may be the reason for the caution.
Could be. Could be. He might have expelled some vital fluid there. Seneker going around, lost the lead. That's the bad news. The good news is it wasn't any more serious than what we saw.
And there's Bob Seneker. He's able to get the number 84 machine righted, but he's given up his lead and, in fact, has fallen back to about 7th or 8th position in that Lane Automotive Johnsonville Super America Ford Thunderbird, sitting right behind the lap car number 4 of Dave Sensabaugh.
Let's take a look up front. There's Bob Seneker. Of course, whatever happened has already happened, and
2 other cars had already spun. I think Rick Miller and Lowell Bennett had already looped it. Look at Brian Refner sideways. So is Kevin Sawinski. So somebody's dumped a lot of something on the racetrack, and we would only guess at this point that it may have been the number 32 of Ted Smokestad.
Well, Seneker didn't keep it entirely off the wall up there. It looks like he just nudged it ever so slightly. Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen, who will have the inside word.
Dan Crawford is the crew chief for Bob Seneker. Dan, what did he say to you?
He said he got in something slippery and spun out. He didn't hit nothing and nobody hit him. He spun out on his own.
Are you going to stay out?
Oh, yeah, we're definitely staying out. Car's real good. We're not going to take a chance.
Well, apparently he didn't quite touch the wall. Looked like he might have just ever so slightly nudged it up there. Bob Seneker is staying out on the racetrack, but down in pit road, a lot of action. Here's Ralph again.
Well, little Glenn Allen Jr. just pitted. He changed rear tires only, not right, not left, but just the 2 rear tires. All the other cars that came in seemed to take right side tires. Most of the crews seemed to feel they were in pretty good shape at this point, and we're not planning on pitting unless something really happened at the end of the race here where we see all the leaders come in. But at this point, everybody seems pretty happy who is up front.
Well, a number of cars going on to pit road, some staying out, including Bob Seneker, who had been the leader a moment ago. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back to the Tournament of Speed 300. We're back and still under caution, although flagman Roger Slack is threatening them with that green flag. He's waving it at them, pointing it menacingly, and apparently we're going to be racing here in just another moment or so. 65 laps remain in this Tournament of Speed 300 at Wisconsin International Raceway. There's the young flagman for the American Speed Association, and there's the young race leader, Brian Refner, with the young number 2 contender, Tony Raines, right behind him.
Behind them, it's Rich Bickle, Matt Kenseth, Bob Seneker 5th, 6th is Mike Miller, 7th is Brandon Sperling, 8th is car number 53, Scott Hansen, Glenn Allen Jr. 9th after pit stops, 10th is Kevin Sawinski, 11th Todd Forbes, and 12th the last lead lap car, Jay Sauter's car number 1. But as we've already documented, Sauter's got some brake problems.
The leader, Brian Refner, the would-be champion of the American Speed Association, and of course with Mike Eddy's misfortune having lost 87 laps while they worked on his brakes. We're going to watch Brian Refner and see if he can handle the pressure here by Tony Raines. We also would like to thank Dennis Lampman for having joined us here in the booth and making us look so bad. He's guessing everything right. And we got to find that guy a sponsor, I'll tell you what, just to get him out of here. Otherwise, he's going to be haunting us up in the booth for all the rest of the season. And we'd like to welcome Doug Mayer up here to the booth. Doug, of course, would much rather be racing out there, but we're certainly happy to see him not only up here in the booth, but looking mighty good after a pretty scary incident in Topeka.
Yeah, actually, it's good to be here. It's good to be anywhere right now. It was a pretty darn hard hit down there, and just feeling a lot better. Glad we all came up here, though. It's some pretty good racing action this afternoon.
Any thoughts? Have you had some time to kind of reflect on the first 235 laps of this race? Anything sticking out clearly in your mind?
Not a heck of a lot. I've just been trying to take it all in. Like I said, this is one of the races that we had planned on running, and it looks like it's a fun racetrack, but it's also a pretty tough racetrack, and people have to be consistent, and you have to be there at the end.
Any surprises, or things pretty much as you might have thought they'd be?
Well, I know that some of these guys are consistently up front, like Brian Refner, Scott Hansen. It'd be nice to see Dennis Lampman back out there, like you said, instead of up here in the broadcast booth. You've got another yellow.
Tim Sauter has spun coming off turn number 4 and brought out another caution flag. There was a great battle for second position between Tony Raines and Rich Bickle, and it does look like the older tires of Brian Refner may work to a disadvantage for him.
Let's take a look here once again from our speed shot camera, the unmanned camera on the wall out there. And here, let's see, there he is. He's whirling around there and just stays off the end of pit wall.
There's Tim Sauter in the car number 09, the Pit Stop Sport Refresher Chevrolet, a car that he hopes to campaign full-time for owner Tim Kesman in 1996, hopefully for Rookie of the Year.
I like the hood on that race car. That's
a pretty race car.
Yeah, very nice. Brian Refner in the PMW number 5 car, and tires might be the story. What's up, Ralph?
Well, let's find out from his crew chief, Les Bach. Les, we're talking a lot about, he's chatting a little bit with Brian. We're talking a lot about the length of mileage you have on your tires. How do you feel about them right now, and how many laps you got?
Well, you know, we decided to stay out and play it conservative. You know, we should take back over the points lead here, and we don't have to come back through the pack and risk getting wrecked this way, and we'll just see what happens. You know, if the tires, they'll have probably 100 green laps on them at the end, and we'll see what happens. So maybe we can hang on, and maybe they'll go away. I don't know.
Playing conservative can also be dangerous, gentlemen. If they've got 100-plus laps on those tires at the finish, maybe they'll be a little too slick, and you'll have a hard time controlling that car.
Tony Raines not wasting any time going right after Brian Refner. He must see something, namely that his car is a lot faster than that of Refner's.
I think what he sees is a rearview mirror full of car number 97. Bickle had charged up to catch him for second position, and Raines knows that he needs to go to work quickly on Refner.
Little bit up in the marbles there. Mike Eddy coming down inside Mike Miller. Of course, Mike Eddy's a race car driver, and put Miller up there in the marbles a little bit. He got sideways, thought it was something more serious than it was. But you're right, Richie Bickle and now Tony Raines putting on a great battle for second behind Refner, who's doing a great job of holding them off.
Well, Mike Miller and Bob Seneker both elected to stay out after this most recent caution flag. And I think for Mike Miller, the car seems to work better after he's got 15 or 20 laps of green flag racing on those tires.
Well, he's working his way around Brad Loney once again. You got to hold your breath just a little when those two guys get together. Here's what we were talking about. He comes up and just tags a little something. I'm not sure if he actually hit the wall. He might have brushed it slightly, but he sure got up there in what they call the marbles, that loose stuff up high on the racetrack.
He did a great job to keep the car pointed in the right direction, but now he is about to be overtaken by Scott Hansen and perhaps Glenn Allen Jr. as they've got fresher tires. And suddenly, Bickle is no longer pressuring Tony Raines. He's feeling some heat from Matt Kenseth.
Well, and if Brian Refner's tires are going away, well, somebody ought to tell Refner, because he's just running off, and now Tony Raines can't even catch up to him. Bickle and Kenseth going at it for third and fourth. Things shuffling around quite a bit on the racetrack.
It's a great battle for third position. And again, the top four cars, you've got Brian Refner, a lot of laps at Kaukauna, Tony Raines, who's run several ART-Go races, and then the two guys behind him, Rich Bickle and Matt Kenseth, also many, many miles of competition on this unusual racetrack.
Brian Refner continues to lead. Tony Raines challenging, but not very hard in second spot right now. We'll take another opportunity for a quick pause, and we'll be right back. We're back at Wisconsin International Raceway. We're looking at the final 45 laps, and a new leader, Tony Raines, with number 87, while you were gone, made a pass for the lead, and we're going to show you what it looked like at the time when it happened.
It had appeared for the last 8 or 10 laps that Tony Raines' car was working better on the bottom. Refner maybe had a little more horsepower, but look at him scooting sideways. And all it takes is the slightest bobble in turn number 2, and Raines is alongside. Now watch how deeply he drives into the third turn. Refner's still battling, but Raines' car just hooked up down on the bottom. And he'll try to pull away from Brian, but he's not yet been able to do that, as they're still pretty much together on the racetrack. Tony stretched his margin now to about 3 car lengths. Refner now, he's trying to work the low side, as it had worked very, very well for Tony Raines. Bickle is in third, right behind Refner, and then in fourth position is Matt Kenseth. Those four right together.
Also a terrific battle going on just a little bit further back between Glenn Allen Jr. and Bob Seneker for position on the racetrack. We'll get a shot at that.
It was a good battle, but it ain't no more. As Glenn Allen has checked out, we're looking now at a battle between Bob Seneker and Mike Miller. So apparently the little bump against the wall, if Mike in fact did touch the wall, didn't hurt car number 18 too badly, as he's now trying to take 7th position away from Seneker.
Glenn Allen has moved quickly past Scott Hansen as well, and a couple of lap cars, including Gary St.Amant and Dave Sensiba. So he's out of this picture, but here's a real nice battle for position among a number of cars in the same lap. Bob Seneker, Mike Miller, and the number 65 of Kevin Sawinski.
3 of our 4 points contenders still very much in the hunt this afternoon, as Brian Refner runs in 2nd position. Glenn Allen Jr. is now up to 5th, and Scott Hansen 6th. We kind of joked about Mike Eddy trying to get a lap back a few minutes ago in car number 88, one of some 85 or 6 laps that he is off the pace, but running very, very well now that they've got that brake problem finally fixed.
Well, Glenn Allen Jr. is just behind Mike Eddy on the racetrack. It'll be interesting to see just how hard Mike Eddy is running.
Kevin Sawinski, after making a stop, has closed right back up on Mike Miller and Bob Seneker. So the fact that he came in for some fresh tires working to his advantage.
All right, well, just as that shot went by, we saw somebody up in the wall. It's Lowell Bennett in Cindy Peterson's number 36. And there you can see Bennett has quickly climbed out of the race car for a very good reason. He's getting fogged in over there and coughing. Obviously, something very noxious is coming out of that car. That'll bring out a caution with 39 laps to go.
And Lowell Bennett, of course, another regular here in Wisconsin, trying to get the fire crew up, and that car is just billowing in black plumes of smoke from inside. And the NVR racing team, Cindy Peterson, who was in that car earlier this season and anticipates a rookie run next year, doesn't look good, as it takes quite a while for the fire crew to get there, and a lot of flames underneath car number 36.
Well, Lowell Bennett did a great job of getting that car up to the racetrack, getting himself out of it, because it's a serious looking problem over there. And I don't know, the EPA might be after these guys here before too long. I guess they've got it under control pretty much right now. In any case, it has brought out another caution flag, and it'll bunch the field back up again. Give us another opportunity without a whole lot going on to take another cutaway. We want to stay with you for a steady run to the checkered flag towards the end of the race, and we'll be right back after this. In case you've ever wondered what Ralph Shaheen and Eddie Collins do in their off time, well, here's Ralph on the near side there, and Eddie Collins, our technical director, sometime director, on the far side, doing a little racing. We're going racing. And we're going to go down to Ralph Shaheen. Any comments on this, Ralph?
Yeah. I took Eddie Collins right out, and he knows it.
Yeah, but
now,
what I heard was that...
What's that? I'm sorry?
No, I just started to say I heard young racer Josh Duvall toasted you on that game. Is that right or not?
No. By the way, Josh cheats anyway.
Okay.
That over there is Lowell Bennett's car just behind us over there, and They've got all the fire crew over there. It looks to me, from the best we can see from here, that the problem was in the back end of the car where the fuel cell is at. Now, we weren't able to talk to Lowell. He is over here at the ambulance getting checked out. The medical crew is taking a look at him. He was able to walk to the ambulance under his own power, so it looks like he'll be okay. He's just coughing up and hacking up all the fumes.
Well, once again, our hats off to Lowell Bennett for a great job getting his car up out of the way. And, of course, a tough break for him for this race, but the race will continue. Less than 35 laps remaining here. And once again, Doug Mayer joining us up here in the booth. And along with Rob Albright, I'm Brian Drever. And you saw Ralph Shaheen, the championship video game auto racer down there, working hard on pit road and all over the racetrack for us. We're under caution right now here. And well, we got a little bit of time to reflect, perhaps, on these last 30-some-odd laps. Tony Raines up front looking good. There we're looking at Mike Miller ducking back into the pits. Both he and Bob Seneker came in a moment ago, and I'm not sure exactly what this is all about.
Yeah, he definitely is back in a second time on this one caution period. They're looking at the left rear corner of car number 18. And we had remarked about the fact that he either got dangerously close to the wall or actually bumped the wall. And it may have just been precautionary. He may have felt a little vibration, feeling that maybe the lug nuts weren't tight on the left side. He really didn't have anything to lose because he was going to be in at the tail end of the lead lap anyway. Doug Mayer just wanted to, for the race fans that may not be familiar with you, we're running a couple of races in 1995 in the AC Delco Challenge Series, and a problem at Topeka. And we talked about the car being broken. You had lots of broken bones your own self that had to heal. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I had a few, actually. The car got pretty badly hurt, but my left side, my collarbone, my elbow, rib, and hip actually got broken. But actually, it's been about 6 weeks now. It should be all pretty well healed up. I feel pretty good. Actually, looking forward to getting back at it. We had a good run up in Minnesota, and we thought Topeka was going to be even better, but didn't quite turn out that way.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you back in a race car in 1996.
Yeah, we look forward to it. We're real happy. We've had a lot of positive, good cards and letters from fans, other race car drivers and teams. The ASA people are really good. They've all been real cooperative. Our sponsors, No Touch Car Care and Clay Magic, have all been very, very cooperative. So we're looking forward to coming back next year.
A little bit of action in the stands here, and under caution, of course, things are a little bit, you're going to have a little something to try to occupy yourself. Snowmobile racing here in Wisconsin. Of course, that's pretty popular in these parts. We'll be back in a moment. We're back at Wisconsin International Raceway here, the final 29 laps. We're still ticking them down under caution here. The reason for the caution, Lowell Bennett's car up into turn number 3. Ralph Shaheen with perhaps the final word on the situation.
Well, let's show you how hot the flames were, Brian. Look at his melted the vent hose here at the fuel cell, and look at the rear window. It absolutely just caved this in under the heat, just melted all right down. Now, I did want to update you as well on Mike Miller. Mike's crew said he actually did scrape the wall, and on the last stop they came in and changed the bleeder.
Well, we're not saying that he had to get a Band-Aid on a cut. The bleeder, what we're talking about is the valve in the tire on the race car. Once the pressure builds up, the tires get really hot. The bleeder valve allows excess air pressure to escape from the tire. So that's obviously what they were working on with regard to Mike Miller's car number 18. I don't know, at the end of the race, we always do a wins-winning move, and if he's able to parlay this into a strong finish, I think that wins-winning move might be keeping that car off the wall after tapping it on both ends. Take a look at the top 21. 12 cars still remaining on the lead lap, and there's 5th and 6th, Glenn Allen Jr. and Scott Hansen, 3 of the 4 points contenders. Brandon Sperling, a great run for the rookie, still showing in 10th position. These cars now a lap down since it was St.Amant and Loney. 16 through 18, Roper, Beebe. Rick Miller having a good run, one of the rookie drivers.
Well, we always have to watch Rick Beebe and Rick Miller relative to one another, much as we did Brian Refner and Dave Sensible last year, because that's really where the rookie battle is going on. $50,000 at stake at the end of the season for that Pat Schauer Memorial Rookie of the Year competition. And right now, Rick Beebe getting the better of it in the point standings, and a couple of spots better on the racetrack as well. As we get ready to go back, green flag race, and Tony Raines looks awful tough.
The top 5 cars now right together on the racetrack. Tony Raines, Brian Refner, Rich Bickle, Matt Kenseth, and Glenn Allen Jr. And very quickly, Bickle tried to put a move on Refner, got sideways and gave up about 7 or 8 car lengths. And look at Kenseth now closing on Bickle.
Up front, Tony Raines
pedaling very strong, and Refner, who everyone says his tires are going away, and he's going to be having trouble just to stay on the racetrack. And once again, apparently Brian Refner is unaware of the problem that he may or should be having.
And Allen appears to be the strongest now in car number 15 as he sits right behind the 68 machine of Matt Kenseth. I wanted to clarify something. I kind of ran out of time earlier. I was talking about Glenn Allen in a reported Speed Sport News, and we've got a spin out of turn number 4. Dave Sensaba right in front of Scott Hansen. Gary St.Amant, they're able to get slowed down, and the caution will come out yet again, and several cars involved very late, including Mike Miller looked like was involved.
Well,
and
he snuck around, actually.
I think car number 51, that is the machine of Brandon Sperling, and some damage, it looks like, to the hood of car number 51. But he'll be able to continue, and I don't think he did any chassis damage.
I think Sperling was involved. Miller just got hard on the brakes and managed to sneak by without any incident there. But I got to wonder if this is as a result of, and not too far from, the incident there with Lowell Bennett's car up in turn number 3. It might have been precipitated by some of the firefighting, dust or whatever, and Scott Hansen apparently with some problems down low on the racetrack.
Now, Scott Hansen was right behind Dave Sensaba when Sensaba spun. Whether or not he was involved in that, I don't know. And maybe we'll look at a replay, and that might give us a little more insight as to what transpired. Here's the 4th and 5th place car, 68 Kenseth, 15 Glenn Allen. Now watch on the right side of your screen. And I'll tell you, just by the way Dave Sensaba spun, I would say that probably Scott Hansen, who was right behind him, got into the back of him. Either that or something broke in Sensaba's car because he went spinning very quickly. And there's Brandon Sperling spinning, and he made gentle contact with somebody. Harold Fair taking evasive action to the low side.
And on
another look.
We'll get another look, and you'll see apparently that Mike Miller just hard on the brakes and was not involved. He managed to sneak around the outside, but yes, Sensaba got around pretty quick there, and I'd have to say it was either something broke or Hansen got into him.
And it looked to me like Brandon Sperling was slowing down under the caution, and that maybe a car behind him, I think it was Tom Jones in car number 0, just didn't get slowed down as quickly and got into the back of Sperling. And that might have been lack of a spotter telling Jones which way to go. Look at Gary St.Amant. Ralph, what's going on pit road?
We're with Dave Taylor, crew chief for Dave Sensaba. What do you say to you, Dave?
Just the car's not been real good. We were a lap down racing with St.Amant and kind of waved Scott there to the outside. And I never even seen where Scott come from, but I see run into him there coming off 4, and Dave was trying to hold the bottom, and apparently Scott was in the grass or something. But it's too bad for both of us. Cost us both a nice finish. Scotty's sitting here all tore up, and we're going to be about 15th instead of 11th. So we'll just get him next week. West Michigan Chevy car is running pretty good.
All right, that's the story from them. Now stay with me. I'm going to run all the way over here, because as they came down pit road, Hansen was pointing at Dave Taylor. So let's see what Hansen has to say. Scott, what was the story out there between you and Sensaba?
Well, he's been in the way the last few weeks, and it just, they had a deal. It said, if you're not in the top point deal, get out of the way. And, he just, I don't know, he just don't listen, I guess.
Nothing I can say to that.
You don't very often hear Scott be so blatant about something, and he says it's been in the way the last few weeks. Sensaba finished 2nd last week at Minnesota, so I don't think he was in anybody's way, but obviously Scott disenchanted with something between himself and Dave Sensaba.
Joel?
Well, in any case, we are under caution here, and this late in the race, that could, in some other sanctioning bodies, result in a caution flag finish. But of course, the American Speed Association, we will run at least 5 laps under green, no matter how many they tick off under the caution flag here right now. And it is too bad, really. We're not sure exactly, even from all those views. We might want to take one more look at just exactly where Scott Hansen was in relation to Dave Sensaba's car in there. And the damage to the 53 car. Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen once again.
Well, they're working on the suspension pieces here. It looks like he broke a tie rod, so they're going to get that fixed. And they've also got some body damage to the front up here as well. But this is really going to hurt Hansen's chances here. Remember, he was tied for 3rd in the points. What the plan is, we go back to green.
Well, Doug Mayer is going to take his lead from us. Doug, thanks for joining us here in the tower as he will make his way back downstairs with 19 laps to go, and 5 cars are going to settle it, and 2 drivers may settle it for the championship before all is said and done. Brian Refner runs 2nd in this race. Glenn Allen Jr. is 5th. And Refner, if he just makes it the rest of the way here this afternoon, will take the points lead back from Mike Eddy, and Glenn Allen may move into second when all is said and done.
Well, Mike Eddy, you might just want to make a little bit of a statement before he leaves this racetrack here today, because he's running up there with the leaders, although not on their lead lap. He lost, as we said, nearly 90 laps getting his problem fixed. Watch Brian Refner's car, if you will, for me, Rob, because it seems like he's getting a little squirrely and loose out there. Tony Raines' car, number 87, running on a rail, and Rich Bickle behind. They've got a little bit of a sandwich going there, two white cars with a black one in between.
But Raines has not been able to pull away from Refner. There you go. Look at Brian getting way sideways out of turn number 4. Well, he's running for the win. He's not thinking about points in these last 20 laps of this race.
So Refner's driving the wheels off that car. He may not have much of a car to drive, but he's going to take everything he can and try to get it to the finish line. And right now he's got a lock on at least a spot in victory circle and the points lead, as we said. Tony Raines looking for win number 2 on the season, win number 3 for his career. And it was a long time coming between the first win a few years ago and the one he gathered at Topeka this year on the road course.
And you know, the car doesn't look like it's running as well as it was a little bit early. He had a good battle for 4th position. Glenn Allen Jr. had run right in behind Matt Kenseth. Now he is having to fend off a charge from Kevin Sawinski, and I don't think he's going to be able to get that done. As Sawinski goes down low, Glenn gives him racing room, and Kevin moves into 5th.
And there's Mike Eddy, of course, watching that good race for 4th and 5th, and he's not going to get in there and mix it up with him, but he's certainly showing that once he got his brake problems repaired, he's capable of running a very fast line around this track, and that the Goodwrench Pontiac is doing just fine, thank you, had it not been for brakes going away.
Again, before we run out of time, this time maybe I'll get to finish clarifying my rumor mill story. Glenn Allen Jr. has been approached, we understand, by 3 Busch Grand National teams. He's in deep negotiations, but no deal signed. Gary St.Amant was offered a truck ride. He still thinks that the ASA is the place to be. He is apparently not interested in going full-time truck racing in 1996, and I think that says a lot for this racing series. And a great battle now between that number 5 of Refner and car number 97, Rich Bickle, and Tony Raines, if he looks in his rearview mirror, has to just be going, "Eehaw, I love what I'm seeing."
Well, Sawinski, Kenseth, and now Bickle, of course, the 3 of them beating on each other pretty hard, is allowing Raines to drive away just a little bit, give him a little bit of breathing room, and well, it's just falling right into his hands here. Win number 3, career win number 3, win number 2 on the season, just maybe so.
Look at Kevin Sawinski. He's come from 7th to 4th in just the last 4 or 5 laps since we went back to green, and he's closing on Rich Bickle for 3rd. And he might have been the guy that Tony Raines would have to worry about if this thing went another 15 or 20 laps.
Raines in a little bit of traffic. Let's see if we got any insight from Ralph Shaheen down inside on the 65 and 68.
Brian, every year we all wonder, what are we going to do for another rookie crop next year? Matt Kenseth and Sawinski are 2 guys who are looking to run for the Rookie of the Year next year. And from what we're seeing here today, it looks like we'll have another barn burner for the Pat Schauer Rookie of the Year Memorial Award in 1996.
And neither driver are rookie in terms of racing experience. Both of them have run these tough short tracks in Wisconsin and Michigan for a number of years. But making that step up to the ASA and a full-time commitment and running the long-distance races is tough. The fact that they've been able to run 3 or 4 events really works to their advantage. And look at Rich Bickle driving really hard into turn number 1, takes 2nd spot away from Refner. Here comes Sawinski to 3rd, and look at Brian Refner now just having to fight for everything he's got to stay in the top 4 or 5. Look at Matt Kenseth working down low.
Now the question whether Rich Bickle, having cleared the other 2, and Refner in particular, has got anything left for Tony Raines. And we are in the final handful of laps here at the Tournament of Speed 300.
Rich Bickle, who I think will have run by the time the season is over a dozen to 15 Winston Cup races this season, continues to battle around down there. He was the Rookie of the Year runner-up in ASA to Ted Musgrave back in 1987. And showing that he's good here today, 2nd position with 6 laps remaining, but I don't think he's got anything for Tony Raines. And we're watching this 3rd, 4th, and 5th place battle, the best show on the racetrack.
Tony Raines running out front, the clean burn Pontiac. Let's see if he can hold on for the lead. Ralph Shaheen down there with the crew chief, Howie Leddow.
Well, Howie's watching his driver, Tony Raines. If these guys stretch out behind you, are you worried about anybody in particular, or do you think you have them all covered here today?
Well, I think we kind of got him covered right now, 5 to go. I just told him to be smooth and be careful of the traffic.
Howie Leddow handing over final instructions.
I don't know. Rich Bickle Bickle is closing in car number 97. There he is. Look at that. The gap is now down to 3 or 4 car lengths. Catching him? Yeah, probably. Passing him? I don't know. Raines is not going to be an easy man to get around. This time by, there will be 3 laps remaining.
Well, at Topeka, Tony Raines just about reinvented the old wide track Pontiac slogan. Once he got out front, he was very hard to pass, and nobody even got close to getting around him. Whether he'll be able to hold off Rich Bickle here on this racetrack. Bickle, of course, with a lot of experience here. Raines as well. And I've got to be reminded of the story that I told you about. There's a friend of Tony Raines, a guy that apparently is somewhat of a mentor of young Tony Raines. And when Raines got back after Topeka and said, hey, I finally picked up a win, this guy who has been very unimpressed, or at least projects being very unimpressed with Tony Raines' career, said, yeah, well, you might have won, but it wasn't on an oval. So, well, this time maybe Tony would be able to go back and turn the fella's head around a little bit and say, well, I finally got one on an oval. We'll see here in a couple more laps.
1 lap to go. White flag for Tony Raines, and it's hard to decide which battle to watch. He is being reeled in by car number 97, but a great war also for third, and it is Brian Repner hanging on to third ahead of Kevin Sawinski and Bob Seneker, but 2 turns to go. Can Raines hang on?
Well, they got traffic and a little bit of a bobble up there, a puff of smoke. Raines on the outside, Bickle on the inside. They're going to run to the checkers, and Tony Raines, after an almost race-ending incident there, Bickle dove low but couldn't get to the finish line ahead of Tony Raines. And indeed, the crew of the Baker Motorsports car number 87 and Tony Raines, the driver, will have much reason to celebrate here. Win number 2 for the season, win number 3 for the career, and the young driver in that 87 car has certainly come of age in this 1995 season. Tony Raines wins the Tournament of Speed 300. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes to wrap things up for you, but a celebration is at hand here in Kaukauna, Wisconsin for Tony Raines.
Monroe developed Sensatrack shocks to smooth out the road for a comfortable ride. But Sensatrack doesn't stop there. It's the only shock that also gives you extra control when you need it most. Sensatrack shocks and struts, only by Monroe. For comfort and control. Get Sensatrack shocks. Call 1-800-STRUT now for a Monroe ride expert near you.
Rise and shine! It is morning and it is time for breakfast. You have $1.99. What are you going to do?
4 Rise and Shine combos from Hardee's. Choose a made-from-scratch sausage biscuit, ultimate omelet biscuit, biscuit and gravy, or bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. We'll give you hash rounds and your choice of coffee, orange juice, or a soft drink. 4 combos, $1.99 each, only from Hardee's.
Answer me, Private. Hardee's. All right. Fresh from the kitchen at Hardee's.
When I punch the clock, I'm a working machine. I got boots to do the job, got my Wolverines. I can tame a wild jackhammer, revive miles of interstate. I can work like hell, never get the blues, 'cause I feel like heaven in my Wolverine boots. Wolverine door shocks, guaranteed comfort for your money back. Work like hell, feel like heaven. Wolverine door shocks, made in the USA.
This is a deep clean. Something most teeth have never felt. Something you can feel now. Introducing Colgate Baking Soda and Peroxide with Tartar Control. Feel the deep clean of baking soda, peroxide, and tartar control tingling deep in tiny crevices, between teeth, and along the gum line. You and your dentist will agree. It's a deep clean that's truly monumental. New Colgate Baking Soda and Peroxide. Feel the Colgate Deep Clean.
We're back. It's over, and there's the winner. Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen.
Tony, tell me about that last lap. I know you saw Richie Bickle right there.
Yeah, that was a pretty exciting finish for myself. I was watching just as much as everybody in the stands was, but there was some traffic there, and I got up in the high groove and got into the marbles, and I thought, oh, I'm not going to lose it here on the last lap, and I just stood in it and looked over and started wiggling, you know, trying to make things exciting, and it's a great win for Clean Burn, AFCO, and Pontiac, and the Baker team. It really feels good.
Well, tell me now about the strategy that you guys used here all day. Was it played out just the way you wanted?
It worked out pretty good because early in the race, we were just running in there 4th, 5th, and we was, needing to work on the car a little bit. We adjusted the stagger some, and then with the 100 to go, we came in and put rights on. We knew we were going to be ready to run the rest of the race, and the guys kind of came to us. The car worked great, ran the car chassis. Howie's got it all tuned up. This makes it easy.
Brian?
Well, Tony Raines, the winner. We're just getting a late, quick word here, and perhaps Rob Albright, you can comment on this.
We're being told by ASA officials there may be a disqualification imminent for Rich Bickle's second-place car number 97. We're being told illegal wheels? I don't know, but that's what it sounds like.
Well, we may not have enough time to sort that all out here today. In any case, here are the unofficial results for the Tournament of Speed 300.
Brian Reffner third, maybe second. Bob Seneker, Kevin Sawinski, Matt Kenseth, Glenn Allen, Todd Forbes, Mike Miller, and Jay Sauter all on the lead lap, as was car number 51, Brandon Sperling. Ralph, what's the scoop down there?
I don't know. Let's find out from Richie. Richie, we're finding out that these wheels have been found to be illegal and you've been disqualified. Can you tell me the story?
I really don't know. They said that they got 11-inch wheel in the right front, which I don't know what happened if they got the wrong ones off the shelf. They used them as short track wheels, and I just found out. And I mean, like I said, I just got called up here to drive this car this weekend, and I don't care what happened. We put on a great race, and just shows that anywhere we go, seem to be run up front. But I think this is just a bad situation. That I think it was more a mistake. I mean, just one wheel is not going to do it. So it's one of them situations that I guess I get to drive home tonight and think about it and worry about next weekend. We get to go to Dover.
Illegal wheels or not, Rich Bickle put on a tremendous drive here today, gentlemen.
Well, Tony Raines finally gets his win on an oval, and here in this 1995 season, and Rich Bickle, whether he's disqualified or not. In any case, a terrific race right down to the wire. The winning move, well, we're not sure exactly who to give it to. Look at this. Brandon Sperling high-low from two white cars. Bickle down low. Tony Raines up high, stands in it, gets to the checkered flag first. That's the winning move.
Absolutely. Raines gets to run off the high side, and congratulations, too, to Brandon Sperling to keeping that thing out of trouble in a lead lap, barely off the lead lap, 12th place finish.
Real quick, we're going down to Ralph Shaheen one more time with a third place finish.
Well, guess what, Brian Reffner? You now get second place, and that's really going to change things around the point standings. Tell me about this now and how this affects you.
Well, this is just like last year, up and down with this points. The beginning, when we first took the points lead over for the series, it didn't mean a whole lot because I knew them guys were good, and I knew our team was good, but, until we sat there for a couple races, then it started sinking in. Well, then I was enjoying it. Well, then we had a broke at Minneapolis. Fell back, and now we come here and bounce right back. So I'm just fantastic. Happy about it.
Ryan Reffner back on top of the AC Ducko Challenge Series points.
Well, with 2 races to go, this season is by no means over in terms of how it's going to shape up. Count Mike Eddy out? No way. Not me. I think that it's very likely that he'll still be able to come back and challenge because the next 2 tracks are tracks that he's traditionally strong at. Will he win his 8th championship before Dale Earnhardt has a chance to do that in the Cup? Well, we don't know.
I don't talk about the youth movement that we're going to leave here with Reffner and Glenn Allen, 1-2 in the point standings.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed the Tournament of Speed 300 and yet another exciting telecast here for the AC Delco Challenge Series. This telecast, a copyrighted production of Group 5 Sports, division of Group 5 Sales Incorporated. Any use, rebroadcast, or other transmission without the written consent of Group 5 Sports is prohibited. Two-way communications equipment provided by Racing Electronics, the official communications of the American
Pontiac driver. Full field of short track stars line up today. Even Bobby Gill, the All-Pro star, who won Monday at Minnesota, was back in action. At the outside of the lead row, Artco visitor Steve Holzhausen grabbed the early lead. Mike Eddy, the 7-time champion, just recently reclaiming the point lead. He was out with brake trouble. That opened the door for Brian Reffner at the 5-car. One victory on the Tour this year. Former point leader was tough all day. Not tough enough to win, though. On the last lap, Tony Raines goes high. Richie Bickle had been tough all year, went low. Raines the winner. Bickle with trouble. This is an illegal left front tire. Also an illegal aluminum hub found on the car. Here's your order of finish today. Raines and Reffner. Bob Seneker comes home third. Sawinski, Matt Kenseth, and Glenn Allen Jr. the top 6. Now, in the point battle, Brian Reffner is again the ASA point leader. Glenn Allen Jr. moves up to 2nd. Eddy, with his did not finish today, falls to 3rd. Now only 2 races to go in the ASA campaign, and of course we'll keep you posted here on race day. From Pavement Stock Cars